בחרמון נמס השלג בחצי הלילה, בחרמון זורם לו פלג בחצי הליל, אבא שם על הר השלג בחצי הלילה, שר שירים על נס בפלא עם כל ישראל. האביב שוב צוהל ואיתי משתולל, איזה לילה, איזה לילה, איזה לילה, איזה ליל. האביב שוב צוהל ואיתי משתולל, איזה לילה, איזה לילה, איזה לילה, איזה ליל. בבקעת תמר פורח בחצי הלילה, הירח שם זורח בחצי הליל, שם אחי ודאי שומע בחצי הלילה את שירנו השמח כאן בישראל. האביב שוב צוהל ואיתי משתולל, איזה לילה, איזה לילה, איזה לילה, איזה ליל. האביב שוב צוהל ואיתי משתולל, איזה לילה, איזה לילה, איזה לילה, איזה ליל. במדבר הולך החושך בחצי הלילה, שקט הס בארץ גושן בחצי הליל, לדודי עיני נחושת בחצי הלילה, וגם הוא חוגג כמו שכל בית ישראל. האביב שוב צוהל ואיתי משתולל, איזה לילה, איזה לילה, איזה לילה, איזה ליל. האביב שוב צוהל ואיתי משתולל, איזה לילה, איזה לילה, איזה לילה, איזה ליל. ואני יושב בבית בחצי הלילה, עם נרות וגביע יין בחצי הליל, וכוכב מאיר עיניים בחצי הלילה, לי מוסר ברכת שמיים ולכל ישראל. האביב שוב צוהל ואיתי משתולל, איזה לילה, איזה לילה, איזה לילה, איזה ליל. האביב שוב צוהל ואיתי משתולל, איזה לילה, איזה לילה, איזה לילה, איזה ליל. שוב צוהל.
Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались в кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у чах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великої страни.
Найкращий пастух баранячих отар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Їх доводи всяке озброєння, різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів, робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар.
Army
Yes.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 1007 of the news. And today we have very big news of Ukraine launching attacks on Russian oil, Putin vowing retaliation for attack strikes, and also the Russian economy collapsing, and also NATO's preparing for war with Russia. So today was a hell of a day for news, and it's good to see you all once again.
And of course, we're going to be covering the past 48 hours of news from around the world, as we've been getting some major news today from multiple different areas. Of course, our most major news today being that NATO has given a large declaration to pretty much the entirety of the NATO alliance that the private sector should start to gear itself towards a wartime economy. And we've also been able to hear some talks inside of the NATO plenary assembly of possible preventative strikes is what they actually are, against the Russian Federation if an armed conflict was to begin. We've also been able to hear at the same time that NATO is, once again, by approval of the plenary assembly, requesting that NATO countries provide Ukraine with longer-range missiles, including the Tomahawk missile capable of nearly 950 to 1,000 miles of range, to be able to strike within the entirety of the Western Russian Federation area, all the way up to the foothills of the Ural Mountains. We have also been able to hear some major news today as well from inside of the Middle East, as we have been able to hear that Israeli ground forces will be able to declare victory over Hezbollah and the Iranian proxy forces that are currently within the area, as a ceasefire is now going to be created and is currently in effect as of 1 hour and 15 minutes ago, with the Israeli forces now securing victory over the entirety of southern Lebanon and against Hezbollah forces as a whole. We now understand that the Israelis are going to be focusing their efforts directly against the Islamic Republic of Iran, and that the conflict will not cease. However, one of the battles of this larger conflict against the Islamic Republic of we're in has just come to an end with another resounding Israeli victory, which is a victory for the entirety of the Western world. An absolute feat, and once again showing that the Western world will triumph over its evils at the Axis powers wherever and whenever they may show up or appear. At the exact same time inside the Russian Federation, it appears that another evil is going to be making its way out of the door, as the Russian Federation's economy appears to be in an absolute free fall, according to the information that we've been able to find today. With skyrocketing inflation, as well as other major economic woes, including rising interest rates, it appears that the Russian Federation's abilities to attempt to control their economy with emergency wartime measures to help them out during the carrying on of the Ukraine war are now seeming to be largely ineffective, and the Russian economy seems to be in some very serious trouble, as we are also getting information about another interesting incident that is showing that the Russian Federation, in a more strategic sense, is also in trouble as well, as we were able to finally get out of the Kursk region footage of the ATACMS missiles being used that were used on Saturday. Footage has finally emerged today, and we were able to see that for the first time ever, ATACMS using a cluster munitions warhead was actually used inside the Kursk Oblast. We have been able to hear that the Russian Federation is pledging once again to conduct a large retaliatory strike, maybe possibly with an intermediate range ballistic missile or some other form of a larger weapon system used in a conventional or kinetic form against the city of Ukraine in the future. This is at the exact same time as Ukrainian drones continue to wreak havoc onto the very interior of the Russian Federation inside the Kaluga Oblast and all the way over in the town of Salavat inside of the area of the Ufa Oblast, which is an incredibly interesting thing, as it appears that the Ukrainians used some sort of a modified biplane today to be able to strike a major oil refinery at Salavat with great numbers of efficiency, and largely seem to have knocked out the oil refinery itself, while I'm trying to figure out how to speak English.
Ukraine's bringing back the Red Baron out here. Like, the war's going so bad for Russia, they said bring the Red Baron back, let him smack the oil depot. That's crazy.
Man, and not only did they bring back the Red Baron, they brought back Charles Lindbergh in the spirit of St. Louis, apparently, because they flew this thing all the way into pretty much the foothills of the Ural Mountains and ended up actually hitting the target, which is insane in its own right. Meanwhile, we have also been able to hear that major offensive actions have been occurring by the Russian Federation to Ukraine and have culminated in practically no results whatsoever, with the Russian Federation only being able to claim a bloody nose and the Ukrainian defensive positions largely still standing where they are. While the Russians were able to push them back in the original offensive actions, it appears that any subsequent offensive actions have largely been stalled and completely stopped, as we've also seen the arrival of additional Ukrainian forces into the area, including the elite 36th Marines Brigade of the Ukrainian Marine Corps, which appears to be trying to shore up some of the weaker areas of the Ukrainian line and stop any Russian advances from making it farther. Meanwhile, on the front lines themselves, sporadic news has popped up showing some light fighting, but it appears that, at least at the moment, most of the fighting is actually focused inside of Russia itself. And this leads us to probably one of the biggest pieces of news and biggest bombshells of the conflict so far. Oleksandr Syrskyi, the commander-in-chief of the Ukrainian Armed Forces, has announced today that the Russian Kupyansk offensive, which we had covered limited amounts on this channel considering the lack of video and picture evidence, has been stopped and stabilized. And with this bombshell news, we are now hearing that the Ukrainians are preparing a counteroffensive of their own in an undetermined place to push the Russians back and reclaim Ukrainian ground. Today has been an absolutely major amount of news, and these are just some of the major, I guess you could say, ticker tape topics that we're going to be talking about tonight. That doesn't include what happened in North Korea and a couple of other things that has also happened in Europe as well, along with a whole bunch of other stuff. It is a huge night. I cannot make that up enough, and it does appear that we are going to be keeping y'all busy with being apprised of the news for at least the next 2 hours at a minimum. But moving on...
I can tell you this, Enforcer, the biggest thing that I've seen today that's been catching everybody's attention, the Russian ruble is literally turning into rubble. Like, the way that thing is devaluing, like the worst we've ever seen in the history of the ruble right now. It's insane. It's like 104 rubles or something like that, maybe 106 rubles to $1 US. It's absolutely ridiculous. And I think the Russian economy here might be the next thing. Like, we asked that on a poll question question a few nights back. We said, what's the next thing to happen in the war? And a lot of people said the Russian economy is going to have a collapse, and that might be likely based on the way it's going right now. That's crazy seeing that today.
It really is crazy, and there's just been so much that has happened in such a short amount of time. It's honestly insane to even try and follow, but follow we will, and we are going to be making sure to get y'all up to date with the biggest piece of news that we have today, which were the statements by NATO from the plenary summit, which occurred just a little while ago. We were able to hear from this summit that apparently the NATO is preparing for a wartime economy, at least on the NATO level. And this is something that I once again have to remind everyone, it's not exactly a like an edict that everyone has to follow, but according to what we've been able to hear from Reuters, top NATO officials have called on business leaders to prepare for a wartime scenario, or largely a wartime economy preparation being done inside the private sector. This was reported by Reuters from top NATO officials, so this story is largely valid, as Reuters usually does not sacrifice their, I guess you could say, reporting credibility to make up fake sources like some sort of a train hijinks that you would hear on a certain YouTube video. But nevertheless, it does appear that NATO, at least at the highest levels, is still anticipating some sort of a larger conventional conflict with the Russian Federation. Once again, we do have to make this very clear that while NATO seems to be preparing for war and also preparing the private sector for some sort of a conflict with the Russian Federation, NATO cannot begin a conflict with the Russian Federation. NATO is a defensive alliance by charter, and there is no way for them to be able to conduct preemptive attacks, as the entire framework of the NATO alliance only allows them to spring forward into action if the NATO alliance was attacked in some way, shape, or form by an outside power, or as they would call it, an aggressor state. However, it does appear that NATO has a fairly decent understanding that the aggressor state, the Russian Federation, most likely backed by the Republic of Belarus, will most likely be conducting some offensive actions at some point in the future based off of some sort of information or intelligence that they're getting tipped off on at the moment. And it now seems as though they are preparing the private sector, a very large and integral part in being able to sustain a wartime scenario, to be able to counteract what the Russian Federation may do in some sort of an offensive and prepare NATO to immediately begin a counterattack if possible. We have also been hearing at the exact same time that NATO is also giving consideration to some sort of a larger plan to be able to strike back in the possibility of preventive precision strikes on Russian territory if a conflict with the aggressor state breaks out. And this has been stated in some different ways on the internet, and I want to make it very clear because the wordage is a little bit more nuanced than one would believe. But according to what we understand, once again, NATO is a defensive alliance, and from what we can see right here, this is still in the wordage of being a defensive action. While they are discussing the possibility of preventive precision strikes, these are going to happen if a conflict with the Russian Federation was to break out, meaning that the Russian Federation attacked NATO and began a conventional conflict against NATO. In that retrospect, knowing that in mind, NATO is discussing how these strikes would be carried out and what key targets would they be looking to try and knock out at the very beginning of this conflict. And of course, there's a large number that could be considered, and we probably wouldn't even be able to get into the inexhaustive list of targets that NATO would most likely be considering to completely knock out if a conflict was to begin with the Russian Federation, as NATO's abilities are far more fleshed out, far more accurate, and far more precise in the modern age than anything we've ever seen being used by either the state of Ukraine or the Russian Federation, meaning that if a conventional war is to break out with Russia due to them starting it, NATO will most likely be firing a large barrage of guided missiles into the Russian Federation immediately and attempting to completely decapitate command, logistics, and communications hubs to be able to leave the Russian military on the ground pretty much without a single thing to hold. No ammo, no gas, no command orders, and much less than that, anyone to even talk to figure out what's actually going on behind the lines. And that's probably what we're going to be expecting at this moment from NATO if something like that was to happen, and it does appear the contingency planning as a precaution is already being made. At the exact same time, the news from NATO did not end there, as we were able to hear additional news that NATO, according to the plenary summit, did approve any and all measures, and I want to make sure to read this correctly for y'all. Resolution 494. And this resolution states, to defend itself and to deter further aggression, NATO has endorsed sending Ukraine all the means, including medium-range missiles, including the Tomahawk, to defend itself and deter further aggression. That was stated in Resolution 494 right here, and it was also adopted by the Plenary Assembly, or the Plenary Summit, whichever way you would like to say it. Nevertheless, it does appear that NATO, at least on an administrative level, is once again trying to authorize the use of even larger and more powerful weapon systems by the state of Ukraine to be able to counter the Russian menace. And it appears that while NATO on the administrative level inside of the Plenary Assembly has approved this, no country has stepped forward yet, considering that this happened literally just today, to be able to start providing their own missiles. And this is where the important part, I guess you could say, of the internal bureaucracy or politics of NATO comes into play. Not that we're going to be getting involved in domestic politics here, but there is a completely different kind of a political scene that exists inside of NATO. NATO is a defensive alliance. The best way to explain it is that it is a defensive pact that consists of dozens of different nations. It is not offensive in nature, and on top of that, the actual NATO organization itself doesn't actually hold any binding power to tell a country what they can and cannot do. Everything that the NATO Plenary Assembly that we're talking about right here says and states is largely more of a suggestion than a command. NATO's Plenary Assembly cannot tell the United States that their army is going to go here and do this, and they can't really do that with any other nation's army as well. The Plenary Assembly is simply stating things that they believe are going to be inevitable or are going to happen based off the intelligence and information that they are receiving from multiple different armed forces intelligence branches from around the entirety of the NATO alliance. And with this in mind, they are telling many private industries to be ready for a wartime footing. They are also trying to prepare the shipment of even larger weapon systems into Ukraine, most likely to once again give the Ukrainians an even better footing in the conflict. And most importantly, they are also wanting to make sure that there is some sort of an immediate preventive precision strikes that are conducted to pretty much stop the Russian conflict where it began, hopefully within the first few opening days. This seems to all be showing us that, at least as far as the NATO Plenary Assembly is concerned, they are seeing that war may be on the horizon. Whether people wanted it or not, the Russian Federation may be adamant to actually provoke a armed conflict with the NATO alliance and then attempt to see it through to victory. It seems that many people are believing that NATO must be on to something, considering all of these preparations and precautions that the Plenary Assembly is suggesting in the past 24 hours. And none of these are at all very light preparations. These are all preparations that one would see, which we would call pre-mobilization in most other conflicts. It's a bit of a misunderstanding by many people that the United States of America was a sleeping giant that only awakened at the attack of Pearl Harbor in 1941. It was actually understood for quite a while inside the US government that a war with Japan was going to be inevitable. A conflict in Europe was not really seen as an actuality. It was something that was going on from 1939 onwards, but the United States most likely assumed, and we do understand that they did assume, that they probably would not be dragged into the war in Europe anytime soon, although the United Kingdom was heavily requesting that they would. However, we did understand that there would be an inevitable confrontation with the Empire of Japan, and for this reason, we did see that very quietly from about 1938 up to the attack on December 7th, 1941, the United States government, as well as the private sector, were in quiet agreement to slowly start building up the United States war production abilities, as well as their mobilization abilities, so that way, if the war was to happen, really more so when the war was going to happen, the United States would be ready to spring into action quite literally immediately. This was something that was actually a massive change at the time, just to give you a little bit of a rabbit hole in American history here, from the way that World War I was fought on the American perspective. America truly was not ready to fight World War I when we declared war on Imperial Germany and Austria-Hungary during, I believe it was August of 1917. The United States Department of War came together with all of their analysts and figured out that it would take the United States around 36 months to fully mobilize and be ready for a war inside of Europe after the declaration of war had already been declared. And for this reason, that's why in World War I, a lot of American Expeditionary Force troops that were inside of Europe were being issued European weapons instead of American-made made once, because America simply was not ready for that conflict. That had massively changed. Of course, the thinking behind that had changed before the lead up to World War II, is that it was better to be ready than sorry. And that's why we saw that the United States began to conduct more so preparations for emergency wartime measures before a war even began. And we can see that NATO's plenary assembly is starting to greatly mirror that sort of preparation, or at least the statements that would lead to those sorts of preparations. And going off of a historic precedent, at least off the American example in World War II, there would be a decent argument that NATO is understanding, at least the NATO administrative level, is understanding that a conflict with Russia at this point is inevitable. And Matthew, what are people thinking about that? And what are you thinking about it as well?
All right, so it looks like about 48% of the audience said NATO knows that war is imminent, while 39% said NATO just wants to be precautious, and 8% said it seems like fear-mongering by the NATO plenary. And I would say that based on the urgent preparation, or the call for urgent preparations for a wartime scenario, I would honestly say I'm with the 48%. I think NATO does have some intelligence that the public is probably not privy to, and they know that war is probably a likelihood at this point. And when I say a likelihood, I don't mean it's going to jump off tomorrow, or for example, Russia's going to launch a nuke at the West. I don't think that's necessarily the case. I think what they're basically telling everybody to do is get ready for the next year or 2 years. There might be a world war scenario popping off, and if there is not, at least we're prepared for it if it were to happen. So I'm with the 49%. I think it's more than just simple precaution. I think there's probably a little bit more to it that we're not privy to right now at the moment. And maybe in the future we'll become aware of what that is, but right now we simply just don't know for a fact. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that in my opinion, NATO probably is understanding. And of course, I want to make this clear. This isn't something that is inevitable. It's just seen as a very high likelihood. And also, very sorry, everyone, if it sounds like I'm not able to speak English tonight. I don't know what that is, but I feel like I'm butchering some words here and there, and I just don't know why. But
I haven't heard that at all tonight. I think you're just imagining that, man. It sounds perfectly good.
Man, I'll say something like, NATO is preparing for war, and it'll come out like that, and I'm like, why the hell did I say that like that? Like, I don't know why. Like, I'm picking it up because I know I'm butchering the words, but maybe it isn't really detectable to anyone else. But beyond that, NATO probably is seeing that given the current track that we're seeing, we probably are on a path to war with the Russian Federation, at least based off of the Russian posturing, the Russian statements. A conventional war may be coming down the line. Now, that doesn't mean that it's going to happen. I want to make that very clear, because to explain this fairly well, just because a seatbelt is put into a car, that does not mean that that car is going to crash. And just because a cruise ship has lifeboats on board, that doesn't mean that that cruise ship is about to sink on its next voyage. It is simply a necessary precaution to be made in case of the advent of a worst case scenario. And that's what we're starting to see NATO decision making move towards, is this preparation in the event of a worst case scenario sort of an event. And the worst case scenario would be a conventional war with Russia across the entirety of mainland Europe. With that in mind, NATO is wanting to make sure to get ahead of the game. And as far as these preparations to get ahead of the game and make sure that the Russian Federation isn't able to catch NATO with its pants down, I have to applaud these sorts of efforts, or at least cautionary statements by the plenary assembly inside of NATO. It's always better to be safe than sorry. It's always better to have the proper kind of fire prevention equipment inside of a building instead of letting it burn down in some sort of an uncontrolled blaze. It is far better for one to be able to make sure that their food quality standards are high enough that there isn't outbreaks of cholera or other kinds of dangerous diseases because of a lack of proper maintenance and hygiene in food production. There is a great thing to be said for a lot of necessary precautions to make sure that the worst case event does not happen, and if it does, one is ready. And I would have to say that these preparations by the NATO Plenary Assembly are a very wise and prudent decision. The Russian Federation's open rhetoric, which once again, I have to make this very clear, the rhetoric that we are hearing from Putin is the exact same rhetoric that NATO is hearing, the plenary assembly. It's also the same rhetoric that every single national government that makes up the NATO alliance is also hearing as well. And everyone is starting to understand that just based off of the public rhetoric, the Russian Federation may be getting to a point that it may actually go to war. And we also have to understand that there's a lot of internal factors inside of the Russian Federation at this point that would lead to a conflict, maybe even breaking out as well. And on top of what we are hearing right now, we are starting to hear
that economic situation, Tell you, if there's any reason for Russia to be pushed closer to like doing something drastic and maybe starting a war with the West, it would be their economy literally imploding in on itself. Is if there's anything that would cause Russia to collapse very quickly, Ukraine's known this. That's why they're striking the oil depots and things like that to try to hurt the Russian oil industry, which is a huge component of the Russian economy. If the Russian economy were to suddenly just collapse in on itself, that would force Putin to take drastic action to try to basically redirect the attention away from that to maybe a new war, maybe starting that. That could be a reason.
And that could be the case. And it certainly is looking like, at least from the internal situation that we're starting to hear from inside of Russia, they probably are getting to a point where they will start to reach out and really lash out at anyone they can in the desperate throes of a dying nation. And that actually is going to move us out of the statements that have been made by NATO today. There's one left about long-range missiles, but we'll circle back to that here in a little bit and start talking about that again. But that's actually going to move us really quickly on into the Russian Federation. The news we have been getting today from inside of Russia has been horrendous. We're not even going to be talking yet about the conventional attacks that Ukraine has conducted across the entirety of Western Russia. We're just going to be talking about the actual, more so abstract part of Russia, but the part that affects everyone living in the Russian Federation every single day that they're alive, the economic sector. The economy of the Russian Federation is doing absolutely horrendously. Some people would like to say that it's propaganda, but the currency exchange rates do not lie, and inflation inside the Russian Federation is starting to go off the edge. It is truly going insane. The ruble has climbed 3.6% in inflation in a single 24-hour period. It has gone from being 103 rubles to almost 108 rubles in 24 hours. Now, I do want to keep this in mind for many people. The United States has suffered a bit of an inflation hike recently in the last year, according to the numbers that we understand. However, at no point of that inflation hike, which was considered to be one of the larger ones, I believe, in 40 years in the United States, did we ever reach a 3.6% inflation rate in 24 hours. This is absolutely insane. And to give you all a little bit of a basics in economics, it is considered that inflation is actually good. But too much of a good thing is always going to end up being a bad thing. And a standard inflation rate on an annual level in a healthy national economy is 3 to 5%. Unemployment also should be less than 5% as well, as that is usually also considered quite healthy in a normal running and functioning economy. However, a 3.6% inflation rate, which would be pretty decent over an annual period of 365 days, is certainly not good in a one-day period. That is an insane amount of inflation, and it is starting to show that the Russian Federation's economy is beginning to collapse in on itself, quite literally. Many people have tried to deny this inside the Western world for some time. I guess they have some sort of a reason to just glaze the Russian ruble. I have no idea why they do that, but nevertheless, the Russian ruble has actually been trying to hang on a little bit, at least through most of the war. And let me go show you all this, the Russian ruble to dollar conversion, so that way I can show you all the value of the ruble. So this was the value of the ruble back, and let me go get it right here. This was the value of the ruble right at the beginning of the war. It was 1.4 rubles would get you, well, actually, let me see here. Let me actually switch this around. Let me go dollar to ruble so that y'all can see it a little bit better because it's a lot easier to understand that way because I'm having to do some backwards math to be able to get this one. So here we go. So this is the value of the ruble. This actually shows us from the entire time that Google has existed and been compiling the statistics how much it has dropped. Because back in the day, $1 US would actually get you about 29, really 30 rubles. So it actually wasn't that devalued of a currency at that time. You can actually see right here the first spike that ever happened was because of the war in Georgia, which knocked the ruble up to around 30 rubles per $1. Then the next thing that happened were the sanctions that hit the Russian Federation during the initial annexation of Crimea and also the conflict in the Donbass, which then hiked up the ruble to around 50 rubles per US dollar. Still, hardly as bad as it would be today. Then we get on up to the Ukraine war, and the ruble started to slowly climb time and time again. It also suffered tremendously during the Wuhan whirlybird, which came around in 2020. But the worst time that we've ever seen the ruble in so far is the war in Ukraine. And one can see that it started to rapidly skyrocket in inflation since the war has been going on. The Russian Federation, as soon as the war began, had sanctions hit them like a brick. And we could see that the sanctions actually raised the value of a United States dollar to being equivalent to 134 rubles inside of Russia. The Russians were freaking out. The economy was actually starting to collapse quite instantly at that point in the war because the sanctions hit like a bus. So the Russians decided to cook the book. And they cooked the book so well that economic activity, at least in the short time, started to actually decline. And this led to rapid deflation and meant that the ruble actually started to reach somewhere around just pre-Crimean annexation values of around 56 rubles per dollar. But since then, the Russian Federation has been fighting the bad fight, I guess you could call it, of trying to keep the ruble at least stable. Rapid inflation began to set in again during the course of 2023, and through 2024, they've been able to manage the price somewhat well, keeping it around 90 rubles throughout the entirety of the year until it hit September of this year. And since then, inflation has been going insane. It is starting to go at an insanely high pace. And Matthew, what do you have to say about it?
I wonder what's taking it so long, because obviously, like at the very beginning of the war, there was a major spike in the evaluation of the currency. The ruble devalued very rapidly right at the beginning, I guess due to fears of the war breaking out. That would make sense. But then it leveled back out, like you said, that pre-war valuation or somewhere around that mark. And it's taken a very long time, I guess, for maybe sanctions or something to take effect on the ruble to go ahead and devalue it to the point it's at right now, which is pretty much the worst it's been in a very, very long time. So I wonder if there's a single cause this? Is it the sanctions alone, or is it like a combination of all the attacks on the oil depots adding up and causing oil companies to start shutting down operations across the Russian Federation? Or is it simply a factor of, or many causes? Like, do we know for a fact what's causing it to suddenly take hold?
There is a myriad of causes. Sanctions are probably one of the most important ones that got the ball rolling, I guess you could call it. The strikes on Russian oil infrastructure by the Ukrainians has also been a major contributing factor as well. And we also understand that the lack of European purchasers of oil products has also started to devastate the Russian economy as well. On top of that, a whole bunch of other factors came into play as well. It's actually an insane amount. I'm trying to figure out where to even begin with them. But the fleeing of Russian workers in the millions, and I'm talking about working age men who fled the country to avoid conscription, was a massive hit to the economy because now they're missing millions of men worth of manpower that would have created economic activity in Russia, but now they are not in Russia. They're elsewhere, and that economic activity disappeared. There also is the massive amount of losses that have happened inside of Ukraine, and also the insane amount of Russian federal government spending to try and keep the Russian army alive. All of these things together, at least as the major points, including a whole bunch of others, are really leading to the ruble going out of control. And while the Russian government has tried to keep a hold on the economy, things are just getting worse. There really is only a point that emergency wartime measures can go before the economy completely starts to collapse. And of course, Anton Gerashenko largely put together exactly everything I told y'all right here in this post as well, but all of this largely seems to be true, and is showing us that the Russian economy is in its death throes. It may actually be finally going on the down and out. And we have been able to hear that even the Russian Federation's internal agencies are starting to run out of manpower, either due to a lack of them, due to them fleeing to other countries, or a lack of pay, or maybe even a lack of government ability, as it's starting to show that the Russian central government is incredibly weak. To let y'all hear this is probably one of the most crazy things that's come out today. RNA Novosti, which is a Russian news agency, has actually stated today that the Ministry of Internal Affairs, one of the most important Russian bureaucracies for managing the interior of Russia, is short more than 170,000 employees, or almost 19% of the agency's manpower quota. That is
How can that
insane.
even be, though? Like, how can that be? Did they lay people off and get rid of certain employees, or what? Like, what's caused this?
We don't really know. It's actually a bit of a mystery what's actually caused this, because they're saying, and also really interestingly, in November of 2022, there was a shortage of 90,000 employees. So crazily enough, from November of 2022 to now, the shortage of employees in the Ministry of the Interior has doubled.
That's crazy, man. I really don't understand like how that makes any sense, really.
And let's see here. Wait a minute, hang on. Among the main reasons for the situation, the minister named low salaries as an insufficient level of social guarantees. And
But where else are the Russians going to work though? Like, I know that there's really not that many opportunities in Russia to go like make high salaries. So I don't know what the Ministry of Internal Affairs is paying, but surely there's not like a whole bunch of like well-paying jobs like outside of that, I would assume.
absolutely not, especially with the Russian economy and the state it's in right now, with major real estate developers collapsing, major oil and gas companies collapsing. Pretty much the bread and butter of the Russian economy is pretty much on the house of cards at this point, about to fall apart. There's no way in hell that anything looks more fulfilling than a government job where you really can't get fired. At least that's how it works in America and inside of Russia. Because of its bureaucratic system, it kind of works the same way. But still, this is
Oh,
horrendous.
wait a minute, Enforcer. I'm seeing something interesting in the live chat here. I don't know if this is true or not. This is just what people were saying. People were saying maybe those people actually got conscripted, and that was an easy pool to conscript people from, and they just went to the Ministry of Internal Affairs and started pulling people out of offices and putting them on the front line of Ukraine with minimal training. Obviously, we don't know that for a fact, but I mean, there's really, like, it's really hard to explain where these people have gone, because surely they didn't quit and just leave for other, non-existent high-paying jobs. There are none like that. So, they can't just quit and not make any money. They would starve to death and go broke and everything else. So maybe that might be an explanation for it, because otherwise I'm not really sure.
I wouldn't really know either. It's a really weird phenomenon, but it is starting to show us once again one of the most important ministries of the Russian Federation, which is the Ministry of Internal Affairs, which we're hearing about right there, is short-staffed by 20%. And it's showing us that now even the Russian Federation's bureaucratic structure is starting to crumble under the strain of the war. And considering that they're talking about the manpower shortages have increased from nearly 10% to 20% in the course of about a year and a half, it's giving us a strong indicator that the Russian Federation's wages for the Ministry of Internal Affairs are not matching the inflation rates. And at this point, it would make better sense to not work in the Ministry of Internal Affairs than to work there and be paid hardly a livable wage, factoring in inflation from that point of the war in November 2022 up until the present day, which is also showing us the Russian economy is not doing well, and it's doing so poorly. Now one of the most important bureaucracies inside of Russia is bound to collapse due to an absolute lack of manpower and an absolute lack of administrative abilities. Even so, the Russian Federation is trying to find ways to lash out, and this is really what's starting to scare NATO and really the larger, greater deal of the West. The Russian Federation is getting desperate at this point, and a lot of people know that to be very clear. That's why they're lashing out at Ukraine by firing at Oreshnik at Dnipro. That's also why they're conducting very hostile actions on phone calls to British ambassadors to pretty much put the entire United Kingdom into fear. It is all of these reasons it's all of these reasons that NATO is looking at Russia and going, they are truly on the edge. Like, as far as the economics are concerned, they can't hold on much longer, so they may as well go all in, because they're not even going to be around later to even consider what resources they're willing to expend to try and get what they want. And for this reason, the NATO plenary assembly also stated today that they would like to see longer range weapon systems of a range of about 1,000 to 5,500 kilometers, pretty much intermediate range ballistic missiles or some other form of a long range cruise missile, be provided to Ukraine. And according to this could include the Tomahawk missile. And the Tomahawk missile is a pretty considerable weapon system. It does have a range of approximately 1,000 miles or so, and would be able to strike practically anywhere inside of the western region of the Russian Federation, pretty much the entirety of it that's inside of Europe up to the Ural Mountains. This would put literally anything and everything in Western Russia that is of strategic value under threat of a Ukrainian attack, and would probably leave the Russian Federation destitute as far as their abilities to wage war or even sustain their economy for a long period of time. And it does seem as though a lot of people are saying that NATO may actually have a good reason for this, because the Russian ruble is falling rapidly to its worst devaluation in history, and a lot of people are talking about how this will affect the Ukraine war. And a lot of people believe this will only push Putin to the absolute depravity and the absolute depth of his wicked limits in trying to get what he needs to achieve before it's no longer achievable. And Matthew, what are people thinking about that, and what are you thinking about that as well?
All right. So after we've seen the Russian ruble get turned into rubble with the worst devaluation in history, the big question, like the enforcer said, is how will this affect the Ukraine war? So 59% of the audience said Putin will go harder due to this fact, while 18% said Putin will be forced to back off the war, and 13% said it will not affect anything. And on this one, I would have to say that we're already seeing Putin start to go harder because he is once again increasing the budget. And remember, right now, Russia is having a very, very hard time allocating money to the civilians. Right now, they're allocating all the money to the military, and they're going to even increase the military budget even further. So I think we're already seeing that Putin's willing to go even harder because now he's being backed into a worse corner where he either has to go harder in Ukraine or lose the war completely or risk his economy collapsing. So between all those options, he is choosing to double down on the war effort, which is not a good option whatsoever. But at the same time, he is facing an economic collapse on the other front. So he's choosing the risky option, which is to go harder in the war. And he's going to start sending more troops, more ammunition, and everything else to the front line in the hopes that he can make some type of progress and turn things around. And I really don't think that's going to go his way, but I am with the 60%. And Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that I would also have to be with the 60% as well. I do think that Putin will most likely go harder due to the massive economic woes that the Russian Federation is facing, because at this point, there may not even be a Russia to be the president of by the beginning of next year. The economic situation may be so bad that the Russian Federation simply cannot go on, and there will be so much internal struggle and strife in the Russian Federation that Putin pretty much has to throw everything he can at the wall right now and hope that it sticks, or hopes that there is some way that he can achieve the victory that he's looking for in Ukraine in some way, shape, or form. Although I'll be honest with y'all, I don't think he ever really will be able to, because once we start to analyze the frontline situation in Ukraine today, it's not looking good for them there on that level anymore. Again, they were making a little bit of progress, maybe just a tinge of it up in the Kupyansk area, just a little bit. I mean, it was like in a small amount daily, but over the course of about 2 months, they were able to eke their way about 3 miles down the road, which is insane when you think about it, because, you know, it cost them like about, I think it was like 15,000 men, and then the offensive just fizzled out and died just like 2 days ago, and Sersky stated that today. So with that in mind, I don't think the Russians will be able to achieve anything even if they go harder, but that's really all they have left at this point. It's go big or go home, and they're probably going to be going home even when they go big. But with that,
Oh, and also, Enforcer, I see some people in the live chat saying maybe Putin is suddenly ramping up this effort and going harder all of a sudden because he's trying to once again get in a better spot to negotiate in January when the new president takes office in the United States. And I think it's a little bit beyond that because Putin is once again changing the budget and allocating more money for the military going into next year. So to me, this seems like a prolonged effort by Putin to keep the war running. And of course, you have to have money to keep it running. And that's why he's taking money from the very hungry and very needy Russian civilians right now and redirecting it to his own personal war effort inside of Ukraine, because he is trying to basically set himself up to keep the war running indefinitely if he needs to. I really don't think that's solely the posture for negotiations. Obviously, it will have a secondary effect of that, but I think he's actually wanting to keep the thing running because I think in the back of Putin's mind, he knows he's not going to actually get peace at the negotiating table because his peace is basically winning the war and taking Ukraine's land, and that's not really peace. That's stealing land, and the United States is going to be pushing for peace, but at the same time, they kind of know as well that this thing's probably not going to go very good because Putin's going to be very, very hard-headed about the whole situation, to put it lightly and politically. And I think the West is also going to end up probably supporting Ukraine even more once they see that's the reality at the negotiating table.
I would have to agree. I think that that probably will be the case. But at the same time, the Russian Federation is not going to be achieving any of their goals inside of Ukraine. Their goals are far more expansive than the ones they've already achieved, which, to be entirely honest, really isn't even much. In the entire course of the war, they have been able to claim half of Kherson, half of Zaporizhia, a little bit more of Donetsk, a little bit more of Luhansk, and that's it. And that's all they've achieved. They were supposed to have, according to the original war goals, have claimed everything east of the Dnipro River and annexed it into the Russian Federation. That did not happen. And we do not ever see that happening at any point in the future. They just don't have the manpower or the military ability to be able to push forward an offensive that would be able to take this area, even if the war went on for another 5 years. They just never would be able to. On top of that, another thing is that they're never going to be able to create a Ukrainian puppet state, and they're also never going to be be able to keep Ukraine out of NATO. Those are all things that the Russians have failed at. Every single one of the original war goals they will not be able to achieve. And Putin is still dead on and adamant that they have to achieve their war goals and objectives. And there's just no way in hell that the United States or Ukraine is ever going to agree to that, because we all know the Russians would never be able to achieve that strategically on the battlefield, and so why give it away to them when we could just simply keep it or keep fighting for it and keep it that way? It makes no sense, especially when we start to look into the actual situation inside of the Russian Federation with Ukrainian deep strikes that happen today. It sure as hell isn't looking like the Russians can defend themselves, because all the way out here in the area just south of the city of Ufa, literally right on the edge of the Ural Mountains, on the very edge of what is called Europe, this little green space over here, just to the right of the city of Ufa, is the Ural Mountain Range, and that divides Europe from Asia. Right south of that, inside of the town of Salavat, right here, is a large oil refinery. You can see it right here. It's actually as big as the town itself. This oil refinery is one of the most important ones to the Russian Federation at this point that has not been stricken by a Ukrainian drone at any point in the war. And today the Ukrainians did just that. And not only did they do it, they did it with a biplane that had a 500-pound bomb attached to it. No joke. And let me tell y'all exactly how far away Salavat is from Ukraine, just to remind everyone here of how invincible and legendary the Russian air defense is. So there's Salavat, and let's say the drone flew from, I don't know, Belgorod. So that is a range of at least 900 miles of airspace that this drone, several of them actually, flew over across the entirety of Russia, across multiple military airfields if it flew in a straight line, over multiple radar stations, over multiple air defense sectors. This thing flew, and no one shot it down. No one shot down any of them. They made it all the way pretty much to the very edge of Europe. Actually, they did make it to the edge of Europe, and they ended up striking their target successfully. And I'm going to be showing y'all that footage because you wouldn't believe it unless if I showed it to you. So let me show y'all a part of the massive Ukrainian drone strike. And there it is. It's the return of Charles Lindbergh in the spirit at St. Louis as he's flying in from New York to Paris. Look at him go.
Now, see, to me, that's extra insulting. When you send in the Red Baron from like a past century to come and strike somebody's country like this, who's supposed to be the big bear, the big Russian bear, this is an insult. Nothing's shooting it down. It's literally going slow as hell without shooting the thing down.
I mean, it's insane. It really is insane. Now, let me show y'all some more clips. We have loads of clips of this thing, by the way. So now let me go show y'all one of the explosions here. And there's one of our biplanes, our heroes of the Great War, not the Great Patriotic War, the Great War of World War I. And here it comes in. And we can already see that one fire has been started. And we see some ground fire going up towards it. They're missing it. By the way, just to keep it in mind, y'all, this seems to be going about 60 miles an hour or 70 miles an hour. It's not going that fast. They're missing it.
Oh my God. It's going so slow, it's messing them up.
Dude, he's literally just scooting.
I mean, guy's having a nice fun time looking at this too.
Dude, even the Russians in this building are getting a laugh out of it. They're like, look, they can't shoot it down.
Look, yeah, they're getting shot by the Red Baron from the 1800s. That is pathetic, though. Like, they can't shoot down a dang biplane going 60 miles an hour. I mean, that's crazy. And they're actually firing at it and they're missing it.
Yeah, and here's even more footage of it. Y'all are not going to believe this. Here's some more. We hear the air raid sirens. It is quite literally World War I over this area of Russia right now. The air raid sirens are going off. The machine guns are firing into the air. And damn it, Rickenbacker's back, baby. He's back to give it to him.
My God. You would think, based on the sirens and how much chaos is going on in the background, oh, there surely must be cruise missiles or something flying in. No, it's just the 1800 biplane flying in.
No, man, you know what's better? You know what's better is that in a second I'm going to have to put on my voice. Oh, my goodness, and the biplanes are flying over. Oh, my goodness, the tremendous fury of the biplanes. Oh, my heavens, and the air defense is opening up upon them. Oh, my heavens, tracing the sky with a tracer fire. Oh, my heavens, it looks like shooting stars up there. You know, something like that. It's like, we're about to have to go into, like, the 1920s here to be able to get this right. But here's the sound, by the way, just to let you all hear it. Here it comes.
That thing has a nice engine on it, nice exhaust. Much better than those shot heads.
Man, I'm telling you what, man. Like, before long, the Ukrainians are going to start hitting Russian oil refineries with Wright flyers, man. Like, no joke. It's going to get to that point, and the Russians are still not going to be able to shoot them down. But moving on from that clip and into the next one, we can hear it again. And it's just chugging on along up there. You can see a light. It's some sort of a navigation light on the plane. Man, there it goes.
Also, by the way, I think we asked this the last time Ukraine sent like a Cessna-style plane into Russia. How do their radars not detect the thing coming in? Like, surely they have like systems to detect large objects like that. That thing's not stealth, obviously. That is not a stealth aircraft. So how did they miss that on radar?
I don't even know. I don't even know how you missed that on radar. It's not like it's flying extremely low either. It's like at least 150 to 200 feet above the trees. It should be detectable on some form of an active or passive radar, and it just isn't. And it's like, how the hell can this be? Like, I just don't even know. But here's the old clip of it where you can clearly see it is Charles Lindbergh coming into Paris, and there it goes. It's quite no joke. It's just a biplane, like, and it had a 500-pound bomb on it. This thing slammed down into the refinery. From what we heard, we didn't have footage of the actual impact. However, we just have footage from after the fact. But y'all could see the smoke plume that came up from one of these biplanes, and from what we understand, it had a Fab 500 on board. So this thing, well, actually, it was like a Fab 250, which is equivalent to about a 500-pound explosive here in the West. But still, this thing caused some damage. Like, this thing actually caused about as much damage as an ATACMS hitting that oil refinery, and it's a biplane. Like, you can't make this stuff up. It's the craziest thing ever. It flew 900 miles through Russia. They didn't shoot it down. It hit its target in Salavat. The Russians are now whining and moaning about it, and they're saying that this is wrong and that Ukraine shouldn't have done it. And it's like, maybe if you're going to fight a war, maybe you should have proper air defense where a drone doesn't fly across Russia for 900 miles. It's a literal biplane, and you don't shoot it down. Like, just to give you all an idea of this, like, this thing, like, just, like, flew right past Saratov. No joke, because the flight path, if we're going in a straight line here from Sumy, which we'd assume that it's going in a straight line, probably in a more quiet area of the border, so that way they didn't see it on the ground. But let's click right there. So, here is Saratov. So this thing was not that far away from the strategic bomber base that the Russians actually fire off a large amount of their ballistic missiles from. This is where they begin their journey, is being loaded up onto the bombers at Ingles base near Saratov. And that drone flew maybe just 60 miles north, and no one detected it. It just went flying right over the Volga, one of the most actively used corridors of maritime transport inside of Russia. No one saw it. No one said anything about it. It flies all the way to here. No one said a thing. No one even did a thing about it until it was slamming down into the refinery. Then finally we saw one guy with a machine gun shoot at it. This is why we know Russia sucks. Like, we don't have to go into any deep analysis. I don't have to listen to some guy from West Point who gets paid by the Russians to say stupid stuff. I don't have to listen to some guy who has an affinity for, folks who may not be of age. I don't have to listen to stupid people like that to know that the Russians are cooked. Like, the Russians are truly cooked. The goose is cooked. It's time for them to largely put in the towel, because when you let a biplane fly 900 miles into Russia and then it explodes onto its target, I gotta say, at that point, you can't really fight a war, can you? I mean, like, that's like, man, that's like no joke. Let me think of this. Let me come up with a good comparison for this. 900 miles? Let's see here. So that would be like launching a drone from New York. Let me measure out 900 miles here. Yeah, 900 miles. That's about that far. It's like launching a drone from the city of New York and then flying it all the way down to Montgomery, Alabama. That's how far this drone flew over Russia. And not a soul detected it or looked at it or shot it down.
That's crazy. You think we would detect it if it was flying through the USA? Do you think we would? I mean, obviously, there was a Chinese hot air balloon that came across our territory a while back. We pretended like we didn't see it, but we did pick it up on NORAD radar, by the way. Like, we did see it at least, but they just chose not to act on it. But meanwhile, Russia, apparently, they didn't even see it, nor did they act on it. So when they finally got to see the thing, the Red Baron was right over their head and probably coming down pretty hard.
Matthew, I have to say that if this thing was flying in America, you know it'd be detected. You know why? Because because that guy at JFK Airport, who's the famous air traffic controller, he'd be like, unidentified biplane, identify yourself. You're not identifying yourself. Click. U.S. Air Force, we need you to shoot it down. like that would have been it. Like, they would have been like, we don't know what that is. It's not calling into anyone. Go check it out. And that's what would have happened. Like, we would have had that happen. and then it would have been shot down. Like, just to let you know, American airspace compared to Russian airspace is locked down. Like, you cannot get above 200 feet in the United States without something being an issue. If you fly a drone higher than, I think it's 200 feet or something like that, and it's a sizable enough drone, you will get a call from the FAA. If you fly a plane without a proper flight path from an airport, you will be intercepted by an Air National Guard. It will happen. It's happened to so many people. It's been documented on YouTube dozens, if not hundreds of times, that this has happened in the United States. Our airspace is locked down, and properly so. Russian airspace, however, if you have wings and some dreams, you can pretty much go anywhere in Russia, and no one's going to give you any problems. Like, literally nobody. I mean, sure, someone might fire at you from the ground with a machine gun if you get close to an oil refinery, probably because they're scared of your Ukrainian drone. But beyond that, you can fly literally anywhere in Russia, and that was also proven true back in the day, not to get into a huge rabbit hole, by, I believe it was a West German student pilot who flew all the way from West Germany to Moscow and landed in Red Square. I forgot the exact story of that, but he literally flew all the way through Russia. No one really shot him down. No one really messed with him. And he just landed in Red Square with a Cessna, and he, like, pretty much won. Like, he didn't do anything. He just landed there, got out, and then people walked up to him and were like, "Oh, what are you doing here?" And he's like, "Oh, I'm from West Germany. I just landed here." And then they were like, "Oh, we need to call some people. This wasn't supposed to happen," and then they arrested him. But beyond that,
Well, I will say there was one time, I believe a Cessna was flown onto the White House lawn, I think, or something like that. A Cessna was flown somewhere around the White House where it wasn't supposed to be. I can't remember the whole story, but I think we have had something similar. But the plane was being tracked in the air, and it simply just veered right into unrestricted airspace. So it was seen, but nobody really had time to react to really like take the thing out or do something to it. So we have had something similar, but not quite as bad as letting the Red Baron fly in.
But that's different, though, because it's like, if it's flying over the Potomac and then it goes into restricted airspace, it's like, that is such a short amount of time and such a short distance. Like, let's just say it was over the Potomac right here. That is literally 1.1 mile worth of reaction time. That's not 900 miles. Like for example, let's think about this. When 9/11 happened, let's just give this an example, because this is a pretty good one. Aircraft hit the Twin Towers, and we already were shutting down U.S. airspace before the second one even hit the tower. We were already getting everyone grounded at that point and trying to figure out where the other two were that had been hijacked. And from what we know, Flight 93, I believe it was, that crashed in Pennsylvania, if it had not somehow crashed or had been brought under control of the passengers, the United States Air Force or the Air National Guard in that area would have, without a doubt, shot down that aircraft. It would have happened, because it's a national security risk at that point. You can't let the thing keep flying, considering how much damage the other two had already caused. That's what was happening then. Like, it didn't take us a moment to go, "Oh no, where are they?" Like, we were already getting ready to shoot planes down once that attack started to happen. It shows how different the preparation is in the really how different the airspace is controlled here in the United States, or really in the Western world at all, versus Russia. There's almost no control over there at all.
Yeah, maybe so. I mean, it could be.
And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least the best I can. But that's not the only attack they suffered today. Oh, no. They had another one. They got hit again at Kaluga. Like, they got hit on Saturday. Well, actually, they got hit on Sunday. And then they got hit on Tuesday as well. And so I guess you could say, Matthew, that the birds that they didn't eat, but those were reserved for Tuesday. I guess they were cooking them up here in Kaluga.
Do that. I was just about to do the same joke. Speaking of the economy, this surely isn't doing any favors.
Man, this is definitely going to affect the trout population for sure right here. This will do it. But nevertheless, moving on out of the Kaluga area, we have a load of questions that we have to ask about the NATO plenary assembly today, because there is one that's really been dominating people's minds. The NATO Council has suggested arming Ukraine with medium-range missiles, such as the Tomahawk, which is really the most important and really the most shimmering, shining example of a medium-range missile. And a lot of people are putting in their thoughts. Seems like a lot of people are actually behind that. But Matthew, what are people thinking about that, and what are you thinking about that as well?
All right, so it looks like about 68% of the audience said that we should give Ukraine Tomahawk missiles, those medium-range missiles, while 15% said we should not give bigger weapons just yet, and 12% said give them only if 100% necessary. And on this question right here, I'm going to be perfectly honest with everybody. Typically, I would say just give Ukraine what they're asking for, because typically what they're asking for is needed to fight the war. But on this one, I don't think Ukraine's actually been really pushing very hard for the Tomahawks. They have asked for them, but they haven't really been pushing and begging for the Tomahawks. This is something that the NATO Council went out on their own and said, I think that we actually should send those to Ukraine, and it probably would be of use. But the catch is, though, these are very, very long-range missiles, and the question would be, what exactly are the targets that Ukraine plans on hitting with these very long-range missiles? As long as they stay basically limited to military targets and things like that, then I would say probably good to go. But the catch is, they do open the possibility of striking Moscow government buildings and other things like that with these missiles. I believe that would be within range of a Tomahawk, and of course, that does carry some risk with it, because if you strike a government building, that does take things to a whole nother level. But I'm actually with the 12%. I would say give only if 100% necessary. And Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say, I largely would be, it's a bit of a tough one to decide, because like we've said in the analysis a while ago, we're getting close to some sort of a red line. I don't really know if sending a Tomahawk like that would send it all the way over the red line, because everything in Western Russia, which is really the only important stuff in Russia, would be a target at that point. A Tomahawk has a range of 950 to 1,000 miles, meaning that all the way up here, and everything in an arc, in a circle pretty much in Russia, would be a target for a Tomahawk. So that means that a Tomahawk could actually be fired pretty much into the Ural Mountains themselves, reaching the very edge of the European area of Russia. And with that in mind, literally any military target would be able to be hit and destroyed at that point. Now, with that in mind, that might actually freak out the Russians enough they may start to escalate it beyond the red line. So I would have to say I only believe that we should give those if absolutely necessary, because I do believe that we can give Ukraine some more abilities or allow them to do more things. I feel like this one, though, would most likely be crossing the red line and freak them out enough that the Russians would panic. Because a lot of people are saying, and I see a lot of people saying this, and this is a good point, it certainly would stop the Russians. It certainly will, but that's the thing that'll freak the Russians out. It certainly would stop them. And once Russia gets into a position where they're truly going to lose and there's really nothing they can do about it, they have nothing to lose at that point. So in their mind, they will start doing literally anything and everything to just blow the situation out of proportion, because they have now lost. And we're trying to avoid that kind of a situation, because while we do want to see the Russians put on the back foot and pretty much screwed over permanently, we can't do it so quickly and directly like with this, to the point that they freak out. Because if they freak out, they're a nuclear-armed country that's now freaked out, and we could be dealing with a whole can of worms that we really do not want. So,
Enforcer, I think the really big question here is, if we're going to ask ourselves and be perfectly honest, is a Tomahawk needed for Ukraine to win the war? And I would say it probably is not. The Tomahawk is not something that Ukraine must have in order to win the war. They could win it without it, but having Tomahawks would obviously speed up the winning on Ukraine's side. But like the Enforcer is saying as well, we don't want to cause unnecessary escalation where Russia could consider actually using a tactical nuke or something serious just for the sake of speeding things up. We can have this war won. It may take a little bit of an extended period of time, but it's probably worth it to take your time and win the war in a more thought out fashion than trying to rapidly speed it up by sending things like Tomahawks. Because like the Enforcer said, we have to keep in mind, we're not trying to start a world war here. We're trying to let Ukraine win and also minimize the damage to everybody else. We don't want to cause everybody else to get drug in and then have their citizens getting killed fighting in the war, have missiles lobbed at NATO countries. We don't want that. So it's a fine balance between keeping things moving at a reasonable pace of winning the war and also not causing crazy escalation.
And also, we have to consider, everyone is saying the Russians have already lost at this point. And if they have, I don't really think that providing Ukraine with a Tomahawk is going to help anything then but escalating the situation far out of what it is right now. And it's already getting pretty heated right now in between Russia and the West diplomatically. It's going to get worse if we provide a Tomahawk. And if we were all of the agreement that the Russians have already lost, which I would have to agree they certainly have, I don't really think going out of our way to escalate the situation needlessly would be a good or prudent measure. I think that we should only give them to Ukraine if 100% necessary. I don't even really see a scenario where we would need to give them at this point. I think it would be better just to hold them off. The Attackams and the Storm Shadows will carry Ukraine to victory on the strategic end, or with striking inside of Russia competently and destructively enough to pretty much wipe out any Russian strategic abilities that are directly threatening Ukraine. And then at that point, you know, it is what it is. Also, on top of that, another thing, and I also saw David Brennan say Tomahawks do massive damage. If I remember correctly, it actually has a warhead, and let me go find the Tomahawk
Also,
missile.
isn't it fired from like typically naval assets, I believe?
There are TELs that can launch it, but let me see if I can find the Tomahawk missile. And let's see here. I think let's see. Let me see here. TELs, yeah, it's TELs, transporter, erector, launchers. He said it. But beyond that, they can be transported by ground. So really quickly, let me see what warhead they have on the system. So they have a well, actually, there is a nuclear warhead that you can put on Tomahawk, so it is technically a nuclear-capable weapon. And it can yield 5 to 200 kilotons of TNT. Well, actually, that's the yield of the nuclear warhead, but nevertheless, the conventional warhead's about 1,000 pounds, so it is twice the size of an Attackams warhead on a conventional level. But considering that, and putting this out there for everyone, just for everyone to remember, the Ukrainians just slammed biplanes into a Russian oil refinery that would be at the absolute maximum range of a Tomahawk at Salavat. Like, that Salavat oil refinery would be at the maximum range of a Tomahawk. With that in mind, is it necessary for Ukraine to get a Tomahawk, considering that they're doing the same amount of damage whenever they need to with biplanes? And I would have to say not really so, because with the biplanes, they're causing the same amount of damage that a Tomahawk would, but we're also avoiding all of the unnecessary escalation as well. And while it would be great to defeat the Russians even quicker, I think all of us are in agreement. The Russians have been defeated at this point, and it's just a matter of waiting it out until they finally give up. And that will not be that much longer. Maybe about a half year, maybe a year. Won't be that much longer. So with that in mind, I generally would have to be with the 12%, only if 100% necessary. I don't think it's necessary now. I don't really think it ever would be necessary, but if it was, for some weird reason, I would give it to them. But beyond that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And also, one other thing I do have to say, as far as we're looking at this on the diplomatic situation, we can never have a total victory over the Russians, and we can never force unconditional surrender onto them for the Ukrainians. And the reason why is because those terms are completely unacceptable. They are a nuclear armed power. They would rather start nuking people before they accept an unconditional surrender or some sort of a absolute defeat. Those two things are never going to happen. And while a lot of people would want them to happen, that is largely a work of fiction, especially when dealing with a nuclear power. We have to be able to defeat them, but we also have to be able to give them the ability to exit with grace. That's kind of the bit of a tightrope that we're having to play here at this point on the diplomatic level. They are defeated, but we're also going to be trying to give them an off-ramp to where, at least for the Russian public, it sounds as though the Russian Federation exited with grace. They achieved some of what they wanted, maybe a little bit. Maybe they got to keep some territory in Ukraine, but they didn't achieve jack shit beyond that. They didn't stop Ukraine from joining NATO. They didn't demilitarize Ukraine. They didn't change Ukraine's government. They didn't turn it into a puppet state. They are no longer able to realize their imperial ambitions across the rest of Eastern Europe. The Russian economy is ruined. The Russian military will never be rebuilt for the next decade and a half. The Russians' standing in the world has been completely undermined for the rest of the century for the large part. The Chinese now pretty much have a complete grip on the Russian economy, and that means that the Russians on an economic level will never be able to operate autonomously again, even if they wanted to, because they'll be entirely tied at the hip to the Chinese. On every single level, at least at this point, we have beaten the Russians. And so for this reason, I don't really think we need to go above and beyond with escalating this thing. We can honestly just leave them to collapse at this point over the next 6 months, and we will win. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And before we move on into the rest of the news that we have tonight, which is still a lot of news in Ukraine and also a decent amount of news in the Middle East, we do have some very interesting questions to answer. And Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so jumping into our first super chat question of the night. This one goes to BC Skyman, the channel legend, and he's back once again with a $100 donation. And thank you very much, BC, for that support. And we appreciate it. It's good to see you once again. He said, "Good evening, Enforcers and LSA." He said, "My father-in-law is here now from Kyiv. He has a summer home in the Poltava region, and a large group of Navy soldiers were staying there. And a new resident from Donetsk told Russia, and they hit them with a missile. And unfortunately, 9 were killed." And also, my condolences, BC. That's very unfortunate to hear as well. So, if I'm understanding that correctly, apparently one of the guys might have snitched on the people, and that basically gave away their position. If I'm understanding correctly, so if I understand that properly, that's definitely not good to hear. And also, once again, my condolences. That's very, very unfortunate as well. But Enforcer, what say you?
And I have to say that's very unfortunate as well. Terrible to hear, and especially around the area of Poltava. Well, in the Poltava Oblast, at least. I actually have a friend who's in the Poltava Oblast. Well, I had a friend. There's been some things with that, but beyond that, that is very unfortunate to hear, though, that did happen. I hate to hear of the loss of those 9 sailors. Well, actually, let me make sure I'm getting that correct. Let's see here. A group of Navy soldiers. So Marines, Naval Infantry Squads, or sailors. I'm not sure which one, but that is unfortunate to hear that they got blasted by a Russian missile. Also, from what I'm understanding, because I'm going to throw out my version of what I'm understanding, is that a lady who apparently fled from Donetsk, saw the sailors at the house, then snitched to the Russians, most likely through Telegram, and then the Russians hit it with a missile. If that is the case...
BC said a lady snitched from Donetsk. So apparently she came in there and decided she's going to get all of them killed, and then told. So, you know, that's a hell of a move.
Absolutely stupid. Hopefully she was arrested by the FSB and held accountable for the crime, because that is a horrendous crime right there. That's treason, actually. In the United States, that's still punishable with death. I don't believe that's what it's punishable with in Ukraine, but largely, I believe that the most severe punishment should be issued out for treason at all levels, regardless of how big or serious the crime was. If you do something like that, I do believe that that would be the appropriate punishment at that moment. But beyond that, I do thank you for the support, BC Skyman, and good evening to you, and long live the Lee Spring Army. And it's also great to hear that your father-in-law is here, is in Georgia from Kyiv. That's incredibly good to hear, and I hope that y'all are having a good time together and getting to chit-chat about everything that's been going on and all of y'all's lives, and not only that, in his life as well, because it has to have been one hell of a time over there in Ukraine, and I'm sure that he's glad to be out of there and getting a break for just a little bit at the moment, and making sure to kind of take in the fresh American air, especially the fresh American southeastern air, which at this moment is getting chilly, very chilly, long-lasting chilly, but still, thank you so much.
Now, Enforcer, a good piece of this story right here. So I was just told by BC Skyman that the snitch apparently did get caught, and she's now in prison, apparently life in prison, as a result of being a traitor and a snitch. So at least that was a positive ending to the story. She was held accountable.
That's good to hear, at least. But I still believe that the punishment should have been more severe, because I believe at that point, that kind of treason deserves some sort of an even rougher punishment than that, in my opinion. But still, I hope that does address that the best I can. And I thank you so much once again for support, BC Skyman, and helping this channel to keep on running, because you help us to be able to keep the news flowing each and every single day, which is really a massive thing, because we run this channel 7 days a week. We were even running this thing yesterday behind the scenes, having to do a whole bunch of stuff, a whole bunch of rigmarole. And also, if y'all didn't know, the music video finally went out. And that is something that is really cool, because we finally put the Armed Forces intro into the, the Armed Forces medley into the intro. And then finally, yesterday, we were able to put it out as a music video. Interestingly enough, there was actually a copyright dispute that we had to take care of in the background. The claimant dropped off their claims because they don't have the copyright to it, so that was great to see, and it was good to know that they were going to be reasonable about it, because Content ID was coming through and getting it, and so that was really kind of like annoying that Content ID did that, because the people on the other end, the claimant, even knew that it wasn't their copyright, and they dropped it as soon as we emailed them. But beyond that, it is great to know that a lot of people have been enjoying that intro, and if it wasn't for all of y'all and y'all support to this channel and helping us to do this as a job and helping us to do everything else as well, we would have never been able to work on this thing 7 days a week. We wouldn't have been able to come out with cool projects like that. We wouldn't have been able to keep this news running all the way until the 1007th day. And I've got to thank you so much once again, BC Scammer, for being one of those people who has massively supported this channel and helping to keep on running. Because if it was not for folks like you, we wouldn't have been able to make this thing possible for well on, at this point, 1007 days. And so a huge thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that the best I can. And also I see a lot of people saying, oh, I saw the music video. Yeah, we put it out and it didn't get a lot of views initially. I knew that was going to happen because it's not in our algorithm. Like, we are not a music video channel. We don't make bussin' hits like often. This is the first one we ever made. So when it pretty much flopped compared to everything else, it's only gotten 13.1 thousand views so far. I was like, that's not bad actually. It's doing a lot better than I considered, and it really will probably pick up in viewership around the 4th of July or some other patriotic holiday like Veterans Day, which was put out literally just days after, because that's usually when people start to pull up those songs and listen to them. But what is pretty cool, let me see if I can show you all this here. Let me see here. Let me go pull this up on YouTube. Armed Forces Medley. Oh yeah, look at that, dude, this is so cool. When you type in the Armed Forces Medley now, you get like all of your usual options, but then you also get this absolute baller option right here from the Enforcer
look at
music.
that.
That is cool, isn't it?
That is pretty cool. I like to see it.
Man, that is the neatest thing ever. I absolutely love to see it, and I've got to say, thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running, BC Skyman. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next super chat here goes to none other than Hokey Redneck, who's also a channel legend as well, and throws in a massive 100 as well. And huge shout to you, Hokey, for that support, and it's good to see you once again as well. He says, I swear that plane was a swordfish from the Brits.
You know, it kind of did look like it, honestly, and I know what you mean there, because at least in the little bit of lighting that we had, it did look like a swordfish, a fairy swordfish. And look at that swordfish, look at that thing.
Look at that, man. Actually, I can kind of see the resemblance a little bit. It kind of looks similar.
Yeah, this thing was known as the old string bag. This thing actually sank the Bismarck. It's largely what's credited with it, because one of the torpedoes hit the rudder, stuck the rudder in place where the Bismarck couldn't control it, so it was just going in circles. And at that point, the German captain said, we're scuttling it, and then they blew up the Bismarck. So that's pretty cool that they did that. Pretty neat, actually. But beyond that, it kind of does look a little bit like a fairy swordfish, or a swordfish, to say it correctly, but still. A huge thanks to you once again for the support, Hokey Redneck, once again another channel legend, and I would have to agree, it kind of did look like a fairy swordfish, carrying on the tradition of screwing over the Axis powers. And so with that, a huge thanks to you once again for that incredible support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the final question of this segment, and then we're going to be moving on into the rest of the news that we have tonight.
All right, and the third and last one of the segment goes to David Kotke, who puts in a $50 donation. And huge shout to you, David, once again, for that very generous support. And David says, hello, Enforcer and Enforcer Matt, and thank you guys for what you do. And thank you, David, for the kind words. He said, great job, and I enjoy and appreciate it. And with the current tensions in the world and geopolitics, how soon do you think we will call a bluff that isn't a bluff?
I would say fairly soon, actually, David. That's a great question, and also thank you so much for the kind words. But to answer your question, I think we're getting very close. Like the Russian Federation firing an Oreshnik missile, a lot of people want to take that as it means nothing, and I don't know why some people want to say that, because it means a lot. It's the first time it's ever been used in combat, which is a pretty big and fairly dangerous statement to make, is firing off an IRBM with a MIRV warhead on board, and then some people want to downplay it. That is a very major thing that they did. They could have been mounted with nuclear warheads. It could have easily started nuking Ukraine, and that would have been something that would have happened, and then we would have now been having to deal with. And so with that in mind, I would say that we are probably maybe about 5 to 7 independent actions left in escalation before we make it to tactical nukes being used. And those 5 to 7 actions, it's not like huge actions. They're little tiny baby steps up to the red line, but I would say about 5 to 7, and then we will probably see that a red line's been crossed either by the Russians or either by NATO to the other side. That will lead to a conventional war. I have a feeling the Russians will cross that line before we do, however, but still, I feel like we're getting fairly close. That's why I was saying a second ago about the Tomahawks. I was like, I don't know if it's a good idea for us to send it for all of the reasons I listed, and also because we're already getting so close to the tensions being at the breaking point. it's like, how much further would a Tomahawk send that? Would that send that all the way over the edge, or would it not? And I have a feeling that Tomahawk, given the abilities that it has, would certainly send that way over the edge. The Russians would literally not even be able to deal with that, and they would be screwed. So they would just start going ham. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, and a huge shout out to you once again, Hokey Redneck, for the incredible support in helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are into the final question of the segment, and then we're going to be, oh, actually, that was David Conkey's
That was the last
questions.
one. That was it, man.
And I thank you so much for the support, David Conkey, and your 5th super chat ever to this channel, and helping it to keep on running. Sorry that I said Hokey Redneck. For some reason, I was still thinking about the fairy Swadfish, but nevertheless, thank you so much once again. And with that, it is time for us to move on into the rest of the news. As we have been able to hear that inside the Kursk Oblast today, we finally got that footage of that attackums attack inside of the Kursk Oblast, and check it out.
Твою мать, блядь!
Oh, блядь.
It was a cluster round.
Твою мать, блядь!
Pretty impressive.
Very intense to see that on the ground, I must say. Quite intimidating.
It was very intimidating. And meanwhile, the Ukrainians are beating up the Russians with hammers near the border. Check this out. And we're going to be muting the heavy metal. I say no to heavy metal. I'm much more of a fan of aluminum. It's a lighter metal. But nevertheless, we can see here that the hammers are coming in.
Any second. Oh, there it went. It was pointed at. Oh. Took the whole roof down.
Dude, the Ukrainians are like the mafia. They're hitting them with hammers. Like, oh my lord.
Man, what do you call that? It's like the mafia, they kneecap people, but this is like roofing people.
Man, I've heard that one before. I don't
Not
think
roofie.
Like that doesn't be like that's not a good one. Man, watch out, man. Like, hey, why aren't you finishing that drink? Like, it's like, oh no, look, get away. But anyways, moving on from that, we were able to see some Ukrainian drone units knocking out some Russian vehicles in the Kursk. Oh my lord, it just did a drift. Well, I've never seen a loaf drift. When loaves drift, and they're drifting these days, look at it. Skirt! And they're like, Bliat! And they're running everywhere.
Damn, man, they're scattering.
Oh, and they didn't see it coming. Oh my goodness. Oh my lord, dude, they went off road. Oh my god, dude, they drove straight through the field. And then they got back on the road. No, they didn't get back on the road. They're going off-road permanently. Oh, and here's another one. Oh, dude, it's horrendous out here on these Kursk streets. It's literally the Battle of Kursk, man. They're cooked. Chat, they're cooked.
Are we cooked, chat? Yep, we are.
Chat, are we cooked? Is this it, chat? Yes, it is. It is, chat. But we were also able to see the 103rd TDF also hitting Russian forces with their drones as well. It pretty much culminated in the same results, but still impressive to watch. Fires burn, tires churn. It's a horrendous day out there. You know what? Let me read that like a CNN reporter would. Tires burn, trucks churn, as the melancholy skies are only broken by the clap of the explosives in the distance. The Ukrainians long for better days, or something like that. It would be something stupid and dramatic. But we can see here that they are just slamming these Russians. My heavens. Here comes another one. Ooh!
And then have the CNN reporter walk up to the Russian and say, does this war stress you out? And the Russian said, yes. It's like, not exactly like the best, like, deep digging questions out there, but, you know, it's a question.
I like the one, though, at the beginning of the war when they really had it all down, you know, because CNN is the arbiter of truth, just like Fox, and they were at the Hostomel airport, and they walked up to that one soldier and said, excuse me, as the Ukrainian Defense Force here, are you expecting to win this battle? And then they went, or the Russians, and they went, oh, really? Like, that's news. Like, it's like, I like that better.
And you could tell they were fighting so hard to say, okay, you're Russian, so are we going to get killed now, or are we going to be allowed to walk free? It's like, just, you know, just having to roll across the Russians, that's a hell of a spot to be.
Oh, man. Dude, I was hoping that one of the Russians would whip out a good Mike Tyson impersonation and go, you have to go now. I hope you understand. Something like that, and then just tell them to get lost or something.
Then the Russians realize, oh, wait a minute, we can use CNN for propaganda. Like, you can stay here and film us if you like.
Yeah. Oh man, and we can see the Russians just getting blasted by mines. Oh my goodness.
Oh,
Flight
man.
miles. Oh, and that one got hit as well. Trying to pave its own path through the minefield, not going well for him. Listen, you're talking out of turn. If you don't like what I'm saying, turn off your station. Turn off your station if you don't like what I say. Oh my goodness. Like a laser beam from the sky blasted him. And we can see another Russian running across the street. Why did the Russian cross the road? To get away from the attackums. Of course. You silly goose. There's a couple in the trenches down there. A lot of them, actually.
If only I could make you feel my pain. Then you would understand what I'm going through.
I'm gonna tell you something. I'm gonna make those Russians suffer the way I suffered. You know how much I suffered? I got 20 million to get tapped on the cheek by Jake Paul. That's suffering right there. It should have been 40 million. It should have been more.
They said I was selling out, but they didn't understand. Are you talking out of turn?
They don't understand. I gotta get more Fiji water for my pigeons.
You know, I only feed on Fiji water because they can't handle that. The sun it tastes like dirt.
I'm not gonna lie, I respect it though that he will only feed the pigeons the Fiji water. Like it's like he has taste and quality for the pigeons. I like that he respects his pigeons that much.
You know, when I was young, and that pigeon got ripped out of my arms by that fella. He ripped the head off of my pigeon. I said, I'm gonna come back and get you later.
So then I came back and I beat his ass.
That's where I got the love of fighting. I got that ferocity up in me.
And now, as I was beating him, I started to realize I was liking it. I was liking it too much.
I see that's where we're all wrong with that day, that pigeon.
We got from that, we got to see the 110th TDF also knocking out some Russians as well.
You see, this was about the same time that I also discovered my favorite thing to do, which was walking around and finding some slaw.
Like something like that, dude. I saw some guy, I forgot the actor's name, but he did a good Mike Tyson impersonation, and every time you do it, he was like, "Can I get some slaw?" or something like that. It was so good. It sounded just like him, man.
You know, when the North Koreans said they're gonna eat the pigeon on the Tuesday, I said, can you just not? I mean, I kind of like that pigeon.
Man. And Singularity said, plot twist, Mike Tyson is watching The Enforcer right now. He might be. I don't know.
It's just a joke, man.
It's
just
just a
a joke.
prank.
We're just joking around.
Don't hurt me.
Just a prank, bro. It's just a prank.
Man, I'd get my ass beat by Mike Tyson, honestly. Like, he would just come down and say,
You have to go now. I hope you meet the Lord.
And then he'd just punch me once and it'd be over. Like, I wouldn't survive. Oh, man. But we could see the Russian drones, the Ukrainian drones continuing to slam the Russians. I'm scared. Don't hurt me, Mike. But anyways, moving on from that and out of that area, it's time for us to move on out of the Kursk Oblast and on into the location unknowns. As we were able to get some very interesting ones today, as we did see a Challenger 2 in recent training. And we can see it out here in the fields. Look at it go. Beautiful thing. Wonderful thing. We love the Challenger 2. We also got to see a Ukrainian drone training center, and these are a lot more cool than you would think. We're going to have to be muting the cool music.
Jordan English said, this is horrific. Well, if you don't like it, turn off your station. Turn off your station, man. You talking
Come on, Mike. Come on, Mike. We're doing live TV here.
F you, man.
F you, man.
Okay, Mike. No, F you. Like something like that.
I thought you was a nice guy, but really you're just a rat piece of shit.
Listen, I'm not here to talk about that. I'm just here to talk about positivity. And, you know, like, you would think that guys like you are nice guys, but you're really just a rat piece of shit.
Oh, come on, Mike.
No, F you, man. You're just a rat piece of shit, man.
I should have whipped that one out on the hot dog, man, whenever he said that stuff about us and stuff like that. I should have said that. I should have said that then, man.
I thought you was a nice guy.
Well, actually, honestly, I'd have been alive. Actually, I never did think he was a nice guy. I always told Andrew, I said, that guy's no good. It actually wouldn't be accurate.
And I was like, no, we'll give him a chance, you know, like, and it was a bad idea to give him a chance. But look at this Mi-24 fly. We're watching from the front landing gear looking backwards as it's flying off of the ground. This thing's front wheels are caked in mud.
Man.
And that's right, it goes in the square hole. But with that, That's the end of the clip right there, and we're now going to be moving on from that little clip right there and on to our casualty report, as we were able to see a pretty decent casualty report today.
Holy
Oh my
moly, we
lord!
got 2 Bobcats today. I have a feeling that yesterday's losses were probably better than today's, but this is still pretty damn good to see. And also, the anti-aircraft are still stuck on day 1004. That's kind of odd, but Enforcer, tell us about these losses, which are growing so rapidly, it's sickening.
I gotta tell you, it is a great day, as the troop loss for the 7-day average drops below 1,400. However, it's been 123 consecutive days since it passed 1,000, averaging about 1,313 soldiers per day, and the drone and vehicular losses remain high. That's according to Miss Disa, keeper of the records. Massive shout out to Miss Disa, keeper of the records. But beyond that, we've been able to hear that Russian losses were pretty good today. 1,480 Russian soldiers have been wounded and killed over the past 24 hours, along with 20 APCs, 94 supply trucks, 6 main battle tanks, 19 artillery pieces, 72 drones, 1 cruise missile, and 2 Bobcat skid steers. All in all, it's not been bad, and we're very happy to see that the Ukrainian armed forces are continuing to inflict high losses upon the Russian Federation. But moving on from that and on into the front lines, we really don't have a lot of clips here. Y'all are about to get into that Israel news here in a second, but we were able to see Brazilian volunteers putting in the work, putting in the hours and taking what's ours. A little firefight in the woods. Oh, a little slow-mo here. Oh, look, a Russian.
He's on the wide open, too.
Listen, y'all thought y'all got away, but I got one coming for y'all in a minute. Y'all just wait out there.
Like, it's something like that. We see him looking for another grenade as he puts the Fanacan right here. A good ad placement, product placement, actually. Machine guns laying down fire. It's actually an MG3 of all guns. Oh, thunk. Now a little grenade. He's now looking for another grenade. See, guys, what videos can be if you don't put trash music over them? You just get the sounds of combat, and it's something. It really is something.
Good!
And he got another hit.
They just say good in American?
Yeah.
English, I mean, not American.
Dude.
Oh, good!
Dude, he hit that bunker and he turned into a voice actor. He said, good. Like, I was like, good. Like, I was like, great. But moving on from that and into our next clip down near Seversk, we were able to see that Seversk has been damaged a good bit from Russian shelling. Oh, wait a minute. What type of dog was that?
Dog right there, man. What kind of...
Oh, that's a cute one. I don't know what it is, but it's cute.
What?
That's a military utility tactical truck.
Фортеця. То Сіверськ я вже не знаю, тому що 2,5 роки в такому состоянии все. Нема нічого. Портала нема. Оце фортеця.
Sweet Dougie, cool Dougie. But moving on from that and out of that clip and on out of the Seversk area, we're now going to be moving down to Touretsk, where we only got our last bit of combat footage showing the 63rd Mechanized Brigade using a tank and repelling a Russian mechanized assault. There's the mechanized assault. Here comes the Ukrainian tank, and y'all know what's about to happen here. Oh!
Oh, my
nice,
goodness.
solid hit.
I feel like the line they've got on this Ukrainian emblem up here is just very, very ferocious looking. I like it.
Man, that thing's going grr, for real. Like, that thing's going grr, 100%.
It's ferocious.
Man, that thing looks like it's got some fire in its eyes. I'll give you 10,000 if you let it in my... Silence, are you talking out of turn? Listen, Zookeeper.
Hey,
I've got
it.
10
It's
grand
good.
on me right now. I'll give you that 10 grand if you let me in that cage to fight that son of a bitch. Well, are you gonna let me fight it or what?
Go ahead, then.
Thank you, Joe. I really appreciate you.
Joe.
Yeah, you know, he was doing the voice for Joe. You know what I mean? Like, he was doing the voice.
Interesting.
He's very quiet right now. Do I scare you? I don't let me scare you. I'm just scary to people in the ring. I'm a nice guy. Trust me.
I know there's no reason to be scared of Mike Tyson at all. It's not like he's borderline a little bit, you know, intimidating.
Have you ever watched anyone die?
Well, not recently, no.
Well, you should. It's really enjoyable.
Just something like that. Black Wolf said, "You have lost all of us." Nah, I'm doubting it. I'm honestly doubting it. There's still 10,000 people here. Oh, 9,990 people
Oh
here.
no, man, we lost all of them.
Oh no, we lost 10 people. Oh no. But anyways. Oh, they're slamming them. Oh, they're slamming them.
Bobo Vasquez said, "I don't trust you, Mike, LOL." LOL, lock your doors.
There's something like that. But anyways, moving on from that. And out of the Ukraine front, because that's all the footage that we had from the front lines of Ukraine today, we're now going to be moving on down into the Middle East, as we were able to hear of some big things happening today. According to the Secretary of State of the United States of America, there's a ceasefire in place now. They were in the final stages of negotiating a ceasefire agreement in Lebanon, and that ceasefire agreement went into effect at 8 p.m. local time, which would have been 7 p.m. Eastern time, which would have been well, hang on, let me think here. No, that would have been 9 p.m. Eastern time, actually, an hour before the stream started on Eastern time. So that is great to hear.
Actually, I think that would have been actually 8 o'clock, actually. It was 8 o'clock our time, I think.
Yes, and that would have been 9 p.m. Eastern time. And so, moving on from that, we were able to see, however, that the Israelis, right before the ceasefire went into effect, were hitting some ammo depots, actually ammo depot, but we never got to see them hitting the ammo depot because they deleted the clip. But nevertheless, moving on from that and into Baalbek, we did get to see them hitting that ammo depot over here. Oh! That was a nice little hit.
They lit up the whole place with this one.
Man, toasting her up. Ooh, I love it. Moving on from that, though, and on into the next clip. Inside of Syria, we were able to hear that the United States Air Force has conducted successful actions today in the name of this Grand Republic to be able to strike and destroy Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps facilities and ammunition dumps inside of the state of Syria, run by Bashar al-Assad. A massive success. Meanwhile, we also got to see that Hezbollah was firing off their final shots and ended up hitting a shopping center inside of Haifa, one of their final hits. We can hear that Japanese alarm in the background. Some people seem to be very fond of that in Israel. And there's the impact.
Oh. You know, nothing says peace more than Hezbollah launching a missile or a rocket into a shopping center right before a ceasefire. You know, really, honestly, you know, when you see things like that happening and your stuff, you wonder. Obviously, a ceasefire, I guess, is a good thing because the fighting stops. But at the same time, it's like if they're willing to lob a rocket or a missile at a shopping center right before you're about to finalize a negotiation for a ceasefire, is it really smart to have a ceasefire with those people? Because if you have a ceasefire, then and they're still feeling like that, they're going to start it up again. So what are they really wanting to take a break for?
It's a good question because it's not going to last that long. We know that for sure. But still, it looks like they're going to give it a little bit of a shot. But nevertheless, that is all of the news that we have in the Middle East today. And it's now time for us to return back up into Ukraine, back up into Kyiv, because we actually have one last little piece of news just to share with all y'all. Just a little thing. Zelenskyy is announcing a new counteroffensive for the Ukrainian armed forces. And he has said today, after they have been able to stabilize the situation at Kursk and Kharkov, they are now going to be getting a little counteroffensive moving forward. We don't know where it will be and what they'll be achieving, but still, it seems as though it's in the drawing board. And hey, that's great to hear. Hopefully we'll be seeing that they will be able to achieve some great things in this counteroffensive. Although, I'll be honest with y'all, I'm I'm a bit skeptical because it doesn't really seem like anyone's ever able to achieve offensive victories at this phase of the war. Still, they can give it a shot, and I'm sure that giving it a shot would maybe go well, maybe not, who knows. But nevertheless, a lot of people are talking about the top general of the Ukrainian armed forces, Alexander Syrsky, announcing that a new offensive is planned. Should Ukraine lower that draft age first? And it seems as though a lot of people are saying yes, they should lower the draft age. Others are saying that they shouldn't change it, and some people say it doesn't really matter. But Matthew, what are you thinking about it, and what is everyone else really thinking about this?
All right, so just real quick for some context, Ukraine currently has left their draft age, I believe, at it's about 25. I think it's the lowest draft age that they're currently conscripting, and the talk has been maybe they should lower it down to 18 because Ukraine is having a bit of a manpower shortage, and right now they really haven't gotten that sorted out. So now that we're hearing that a new counteroffensive is being planned, that is confirmed by General Syrsky, the question is, should Ukraine lower the draft age before launching this counteroffensive? And it looks like 38% said yes, Ukraine should lower it first, while 28% said no, Ukraine should not change it, and 15% said it really doesn't matter. And I would say, I'm with the 38%. Ukraine should lower that on down. As much as we don't want, 18-year-olds fighting in a war, it is necessary right now because Ukraine is fighting for its survival. Russia's throwing everything they have, including the kitchen sink, at the war. And even though they're not making much progress, that is still taking a lot of effort on the Ukrainian side, and they need that manpower advantage to be able to keep winning the war. So they should go ahead and lower it down, and with this new counteroffensive being planned, they need to go ahead and get those troops trained and in rotation. So once again, I'm with the 39%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'm going to have to be with the 39% as well for the exact same reasons. It makes a lot more strategic sense than not doing that and possibly dealing with some decent losses and then trying to deal with that later. That starts to put Ukraine on the back foot. Offensive planning in every level, including getting new recruits into the armed forces, should always be really proactive more than reactive. But still, I hope that does address that the best I can. And we're now moving on into Kyiv, where we have the speech from President Volodymyr Zelenskyy for day 1007 of the war. And so, without further ado, here is the speech, the short-lasting speech.
Українці, українки, головне, на цей час майже 200 російських ударних дронів за одну ніч. Більшість вдалося збити або знешкодити завдяки РЕП. Я вдячний всім мобільним вогневим групам, всім розрахункам ППО та РЕП. І це було значне збільшення тиску на Україну через такий терор. І важливо, що нам вдається захистити наших людей, нашу інфраструктуру від більшості таких загроз. Але, на жаль, не на 100%. У Тернопільській області досі триває ліквідація наслідків удару. Майже 200 російських дронів проти України за добу – це майже 200 доказів, що російські бажання вкрай далекі від будь-яких ідей про справжній мир. Зараз в Сумах ще триває рятувальна операція на місці обстрілу по СТО. 2 людини, на жаль, загинули. Мої співчуття рідним та близьким. Ймовірно, під завалами є ще людина. Пошкоджені цим ударом також і будинок, дитячий садок поруч. І попередньо це був обстріл з ракетної системи залпового вогню. Захиститись від цього реально тільки знищенням російської зброї, російських пускових установок на російській же території. І саме тому для нас настільки важлива можливість завдавати ударів по російській території. Це те єдине, що на сьогодні здатний обмежений російський терор. І взагалі російську можливість воювати. Я вдячний усім партнерам, які це розуміють і пояснюють це іншим партнерам. І сьогодні була доповідь головкома Сирського. Це було вранці і буде ще одна розмова ввечері. Пріоритети, вони очевидні. Фронт, Покровський напрямок, Курахівський і також Курська операція. Ми цінуємо те, що партнери зараз реалізовують заявлені пакети підтримки, реалізовують достатньо своєчасно і важливо, щоб обсяги того, про що оголошується, відповідали нашим домовленостям та об'єктивним потребам. Потрібен новий поштовх постачанню заради оборони. І в грудні маємо це забезпечити. Я хочу подякувати усім, хто з нами, хто з Україною. Дякую. Слава Україні!
And Ram Slava! And with that, that is the end of the speech from President Volodymyr Zelenskyy here on day 1007 of the news of the war in Ukraine. And that's moving us on to the second segment here, as we still got 9,111 people here. Y'all are going to be getting on into the fun part of the stream, because we get to talk to each and every one of y'all. Not all 9,111 of y'all, of course, silly. We couldn't talk to that many people if we wanted to, but we'll still be trying to talk to as many of y'all as we can. We'll be addressing the super chats first, live chats after that, and it's going to be an absolutely fun time. It's a free-for-all, really. We can talk about anything and everything you want to talk about. We could talk about hood reviews. We could talk about, let's see here. Let me think. Trains. We could talk about ships, history, food, where y'all are from, what y'all are doing right now. Anything and everything. I mean, hell, even cool industrial stuff. Like, anything is on the table. It's always an incredibly fun time here in the question segment, because it's a free country. You can talk about what you want, as long as it's not politics. That's the one thing that we cannot talk about. And also, religion. I kind of have to bring that one up these days, because it seems as though the religion bots are coming in here a great deal, inshallah, in the name of the Lord and everything, so we also have to deal with that as well, because people are trying to come in here and stir up the pot sometimes on those topics. So, as long as it's not those two things, you can talk about anything you want. But, of course. Matthew, what do we got? I understand we have a lot of fun stuff ahead of ourselves here.
So yes, we do. And just to make it clear, we are fresh out of polls, so that brings us into our final question segment of the night. But I did see someone ask a question in the live chat, which was very interesting, that I do want to go ahead and answer. Someone brought up the drones flying over U.S. military bases, and they wanted an update on what was happening with that. And I will say that we did get some more news today that regarding those unknown drones flying over U.S. bases, specifically in the U.K., there were a whole bunch of drones flying over those bases, and nobody's really sure who was operating them or where they came from. We were told by a U.S. official today that apparently the drones do not appear to be those of hobbyists, and that's a likely indication that an aggressive state actor is probably behind it. We don't know who the state actor is, and we also don't know where the drones were launched from, but apparently from the intel that the U.S. officials have, those drones were not hobbyist drones, meaning they were not consumer drones. They were actually militarized drones of some sort designed to collect intelligence above the UK bases. So we do know that for a fact now. And also, I would assume that since that is happening there, and we're also hearing reports of drones over U.S. bases here in the United States, it's probably the same thing happening here as well, because it surely is not a coincidence that's happening in the UK. It's probably happening here in the USA as well. So just an update on that story as well. But Enforcer, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Wait a minute, you're saying, hang on. You're saying that it's a foreign actor?
Yes, an aggressive one.
So, is it Arnold Schwarzenegger?
Man, he's from the U.S.
No, he's from Austria, Matthew. He's a foreign actor.
Man, he's from the U.S. for all I'm concerned, man. He's an American.
All right then. Is it Penelope Cruz?
Man, I don't even know who that is.
Me either. I just Googled all these names. Like, I'm reading them off a spreadsheet over here. But beyond that, it's some international actor, some foreign actor out there somewhere. So it could literally be anybody. It could be Kate Blanchett. It could be Nicole Kidman. It could be Salma Hayek. Let's see here. It could be Ralph Fiennes, Christoph Waltz. I've never heard of these people before. So if I'm butchering the names, it's because I've never heard of them. I don't get in that kind of a circle here. But nevertheless, it's some kind of a foreign actor. So we need to be calling up Hollywood here really quickly and finding out the source. But nevertheless, I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we're on to the next one. What do we got, Matthew?
And also, by the way, I saw some people saying earlier today, I don't know if this is true or not. I'm not really super familiar with the engagement rules above U.S. bases, but apparently, from what I understand and what I've been told, the U.S. policy is that they don't shoot down drones over U.S. bases for some reason. Apparently, maybe there's some sort of rule of engagement that they don't shoot the drones down, not knowing if they're consumer drones operated by a civilian or maybe an aggressive drone, but nonetheless, I think we should pretty much all agree at this point. If there's a drone flying above a U.S. military base of any sort, that thing should just be shot down out of precaution, or at least grounded somehow by some electronic warfare means. We should not allow drones to fly over U.S. military bases just unopposed like that, because what prevents them from bringing them back again after they realize, oh, we did that free of charge, no issue whatsoever? China's going to bring those drones back once again and launch them from wherever they're launching them from, send them over every sensitive site that we have, and keep taking intel from those sites. I don't understand the logic behind this, because surely that must be the rule, because why would they not shoot the thing down?
That is interesting. Also, someone asked, what U.S. bases? Langley Air Force Base, Newport News, among many others. But there's been a lot of instances of this, not only here, but also in the UK at bases like Lakenheath. But beyond that, Newport, Matthew, we've never looked at Newport News, have we? Is this a nice-looking city? Is it? I don't know. So let's take a look. I can smell the Fed money through the screen, can't you?
Man, I can smell that Fed money. Also, by the way, can you restart our Discord call real quick? Because apparently I'm lagging by like 2 seconds.
Oh, dang it. Hang on. I'll restart it here really quickly. Hang on. Hang tight. And Matthew just left the call right there. That wasn't expected. But let's see here. There we go. And let me get this back up. Can you see it, Matthew?
Yes, I can see it now.
But, Matthew, I can smell the Fed money, can't you? Perfectly edged grass, good sidewalks, paved street lines, slight cracking, but still the overall pavement layer.
Barely any road snakes.
No road snakes, honestly. Like, I don't see any of them. This place reeks of Fed money, folks. Like, it does. Like, and if you don't know, I'll explain really quickly. Certain places in the United States where there are federal government institutions of a considerably large scale, they usually have some pretty nice public infrastructure. Doesn't mean that the area is incredibly nice, just means that there's a lot of federal money floating around, and usually that's also provided in civil grants as well for them to build up and upkeep the infrastructure to a pretty decent degree in the local areas. I saw someone say Newport News is a slum. It probably does look like it because Columbus, Georgia is certainly no diamond in the rough, I'll be honest with you, but nevertheless, the roads do look well paved, and that's something that you can't say for most areas, at least here in Birmingham, Alabama, because some of these roads around here, they're rough. Like, they're rough enough, I think your car will shake apart on some of the interstates around here if you're driving fast enough on them, but, still, with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least the best I can, in my opinion, but still, well, you know what? So many people are saying Newport News is trash. I'm really shocked by this. You're saying that a city close to a military installation may not be savory? That's crazy. Like, I've never heard of this before. Honestly, this doesn't look that bad, though. This just kind of looks like Alabama, honestly. Like, if this is bad, like, this not that bad. Let's see. Maybe close to the actual naval yard, like right here, right on the other side of the street. This might be an interesting spot. Not really, no. This is, man, this really does look like Birmingham, honestly, though. Like, that isn't that bad.
Kind of looks tough a little bit.
Kind of looks a little tough, a little rough and tough, maybe a little rumble-tumble kind of a deal, like but it's not that bad. It's not that bad. Like, you got all kinds of neat places here while I smack my watch on the bottom of my desk. You got the Paint Supply Company, and you got the cemetery, you got the New Home House Museum and Cultural Center. If you ever wanted to look at a nice chair or, maybe from time to time frequent that of a hat, you've got these sorts of things. You also have, let's see, the, Downing Gross Cultural Arts Center. I'm guessing that's, Down Gross, apparently, but let's take a look at it. Maybe it's better than we thought. Okay, they have modern art. Not that big of a fan of modern art, but, they have other things here. Like, what else? They got chairs. Honestly, it looks like any modern art museum, I'm not going to lie. We have one like that in Birmingham. I would not go to it again. Let's see here. Oh, they got a coal yard, man. Now, this has got to show that it's an upstanding city, because every upstanding city has a coal yard.
Man, I'll tell you what, that's, right there next to everything, too. That's great.
It's wonderful. It's great. So that way all the coal dust can get over your house and lawn every day. I like it. And also someone said grid town. That's every town in America, man. I hate to tell you. Look at that grid. And I'll tell you this. You think it's bad there? Let me take you up to Boston, because I'll show you a grid. Boom. Those aren't really grids, but I think if you get closer in, actually, no, there's not really a lot of grids in Boston, except for here. Now that's a grid. But still, I hope we addressed that kind of well, at least the whole, Newport News side of things. But that's where the breaches have been happening recently with the drones. I hope that covers that well, though. And with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here is going to go to Just Chillin' from the Super Chats, and he puts in a $50 donation. And thank you very much, Just Chillin', for that support. He said, for the purchase of some Bot Be Gone spray, and grab a question from the chat.
And I gotta tell you that Discord lag is terrible, but nevertheless, thank you, Just Chillin', for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, and thank you for helping us to get some Bot Be Gone spray. It's not exactly, easy to find. It takes a lot of elbow grease and sweat. That's really what it's made out of, the spray. But nevertheless, I thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to be here tonight. We really wouldn't be. We would be destitute under a bridge. We would not have this as a job. And I got to thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it was not for folks like you, we wouldn't be here right now, dealing with the lag and everything. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support, Just Chillin', and thank you for being an old guard and a channel legend of this stream and helping it to keep on running well on into the future. And so thank you so much once again, and we are on to the next one.
And our next one here goes to Acaril, and this is actually the live chat question, by the way, that he asked for. That was Just Chillin', by the way. And Acaril asked the question, do you think if Russia's economy collapses, will they start nuking Ukraine and Europe, or will Putin get forced out?
It's really hard to tell. That's a really hard one, because, let's see. One second. Hold on, before we move on here, I want to check something, Matthew, because, interesting there. We're going to do this really quickly. There we go. Just had to take care of that one, Matthew. I've been noticing that all night, and I've been like, that's a little weird. What are they doing? And I think I understand now. But nevertheless, Matthew, can you reread that one again?
Yes, Acaril said in the live chat question here, do you think if Russia's economy collapses, will they start nuking Ukraine or Europe, or will Putin get forced out?
He probably would get forced out. At that point, I don't really think they'd be able to nuke anyone, because the civil unrest would be so massive that all their efforts would be focused internally. There's really no way to focus externally, because at that point, he's probably having to worry about the loyalty of the central government, because a lot of aspiring runner-ups to the president of Russia would probably be wanting to take that position from him, and they probably would have the momentum to be able to do it at that point. So I have a feeling he probably would just be ousted, or he would be fighting to keep himself in charge at that point. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and I thank you so much once again for sponsoring that live chat and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing a reality. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and also, Enforcer, interestingly enough, when this lag popped up right here, it looks like we have been suddenly downgraded to 500 megabytes a second download from the 1,000 that we typically get. So I think this might actually be a problem with our ISP. So we have not escaped the internet problems, apparently, based on what I'm seeing there. But nonetheless, we're not going to gripe about it. We're just going to move on. And we're going to move on to our next Super Chat question. And this one goes to none other than Andy L. And Andy L threw in a $50 donation. Huge shout out to you, Andy. And it's good to see you once again in the live chat. And he does not leave a comment, it doesn't look like. But huge shout out to you, Andy, once again for helping to keep the channel running and the coffee brewing. But Enforcer, what say you?
And I got to thank you so much for the support, Andy L, and helping this channel to keep on running. And I got to thank you for the support. It's great to know that you're here with us tonight and that you're supporting the channel and helping it to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to be here right now, right here, right now, running this news the same way we have been for 3 years without really changing the formula or the recipe. And I gotta thank you so much once again for appreciating that and supporting this channel and helping it to keep on running. Because folks like you make the dream work. And so with that, thank you so much once again. And we're on to the next one.
And the next one here goes to Howard Turgell, who puts in a $50 donation. And thank you very much, Howard, as well, for that support. He put in a 50 also. He said, if Putin does go all out, and what can we expect? And will North Korea and China be involved?
No, well, North Korea North Korea would be involved probably at this point. China would probably like to sit it out. They're not really one to try and get actively involved in wars if they don't have to be. Like, without a doubt, they're certainly one of those countries. But beyond that, I would say if they went all in, it probably would look like a conventional ground war, then followed by a tactical nuclear exchange, then followed by a strategic nuclear exchange. That probably would be the exact way it would go, without getting into all of the extremely nitty-gritty details, because they would start the conventional war, they would make some progress, they would get counterattacked, stagnate, then they get pushed back, Then they get pushed back a lot. Then they'd start freaking out. Then they use tactical nukes on us. We use tactical nukes on them. The armed forces are pretty much completely destroyed on the ground. NATO would still probably somehow, some way be advancing into Russia. And then the Russians would start to fire intercontinental ballistic missile exchanges at the United States and Europe. And then we would fire them in return. And that's probably what it would look like if they went all out and they just did not stop at any point for negotiations of a ceasefire or any form of a white peace agreement. That's probably what it would look like. But with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And thank you once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And I hope that gives you an idea of what that would look like. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one here is going to go to, guess who, while the spreadsheet loads here. This one's going to go to Jack Ragnarsson, who puts in a 50. And huge shout to you, Jack, as well, for that support. And I think he has a Chris's mom joke for us, by the way. He said, Chris's mom is so poor that when she heard about the Last Supper, she thought that she was running out of food stamps. Oh, my God. And can we get the marmot? And everybody loves the marmot.
Oh God! That was a pretty good one. That was a pretty good one. I'm not gonna lie. I did not see that one coming. I had us in the first half. Not gonna lie. Also, before I even click on the marmot, I want to say I've clicked on this so many times. Wikipedia says you visit often below it. Marmot. That's like, man, we visit this page too much for the browser to know. But oh, hello there.
Hey, hello there, it's the Marmot, good sir. How do you do today? I mean, how do you do? The lag's hitting hard, but it's not hitting as hard as that failure that Hot Dog Man's having over there on his channel. What a shame, what a damn shame. Not really, but we just said it for the political reasons. But anyways, what's the fly say?
Aw, man, if it wasn't for them and those meddling kids, my hit pieces would have finally worked. Aw, man, can y'all give me a $3,000 for a movable desk and a nice chair, although it probably only costs about 1.7 grand. Aw, man, we're pulling another delicious cam with the S. It's a scam. Aw, man. Like,
oh, man, Governor, he wants a free desk and a free chair. Oh, dear, and he wants a free trip to Washington, D.C. too. Oh my goodness, Governor. That sounds like grifting. But oh dear, we don't say that. No, it's not. It can't be grifting. It can't be.
Aw, man, it totally is. Aw.
Oh, he aimed up to it, Governor. What a turn of events.
It totally is, because instead of working really hard at my channel where people would really appreciate it and support it to where I could save up enough money to buy the desk and chair myself, I'm going to shame my entire viewership into just giving me money for no reason, just so that way I can treat myself. Aw, man, living outside my means much? Totally. Aw, man, running a YouTube channel. Running a YouTube channel outside of my means much? Totally. Aw, man. That's crazy though, man. Like when you like Matthew, just to let y'all know, like Hot Dog Man right now, this is something that Matthew was actually telling me about before the show because he saw this apparently today. Hot Dog Man right now is running a fundraiser. Now, that sounds heroic, right? A fundraiser to help out someone. But no, it's a fundraiser to help out himself. And he's asking for his viewers to fundraise $3,000 so that way he can supposedly, for $3,000, get a standing desk, which means that it moves from the sitting position to the standing position automatically, and also a nice chair. Now, largely from what we understand, the nicest like movable desk and also chair combined would cost about $1,700. So what's the other $1,300 needed for? Like, is he getting like a gold inlaid like standing desk or something? Like, we don't know. And also,
I think it's the trip to Washington, D.C. that he's trying to make. That's where probably the other part's probably going to end up going.
Oh, man, I get to sit out in the street and eat Takis and stand in the National Mall. Oh, man, it's time to do it 2.0. Oh, man. It's like, dude, that's so lame. Like, that's dumb. Like, and it's like, you know, like on this channel, you can expect us, like, if we ever asked for fundraising, which we never have, it would probably be for something like, let us make a new soundtrack or do something for y'all that would be really cool. And then on that kind of a channel, no, it's not for the viewers, it's just for him. Let me get a cool desk and a chair and all that. It's like, that is goofy as hell. Like, I cannot deride that enough. And I can't, like, and I'm gonna say this, like, I'm not here to expose anyone or anything, because if you're giving money to that guy, you're a sucker that isn't worth saving. Like, if you can't see it at this point, it is what it is. It's like, I'm not here to try and change anyone's minds or anything, but that is absolutely crazy to hear that someone would do something like that. Great job to the Fly, but the Marmot is keeping it real up in here. I don't know, Governor, it's a cough up blood. But still, with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least the best I can in my opinion. And thank you, everyone, once again, for allowing us to have a little Marmot and Fly segment, because everyone loves Alan the Marmot. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and while the lag goes absolutely horrifically bad here, we're moving on to our next one, which goes to Gary Bott, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Gary, for the $20 support. He says, LSA, Ukraine flag, and also he adds the USA flag as well.
Hey, thank you so much for the support, and long live the Lee Spring Army, which will always stand in support of American and Western interests around the entirety of the globe. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And also, I hate that the lag is this bad. We are connected to Ethernet at this point. There's literally no way the internet could get better, but it appears that our internet service provider is throttling our internet connection, which is apparently making this very difficult, maybe even challenging, perhaps. But still, we will persevere, because the LSA will never truly die. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one here goes to Effed Up Creations, who puts in a 20 as well. And huge shout out to you for that support, indeed. And they said, sorry, I haven't been around much lately due to personal reasons, and I'm still watching when I can. And keep up the good work, guys, and you can take a question from the chat. And also, it has been quite a long time since we've seen you. It's good to see you back here once again. I did see your name in the live chat. I was like, wait a minute, is that Effed Up Creations back again? And it was. And I'm very glad to see you back yet again. And Enforcer, what say you?
I gotta say, thank you so much for the support, helping this channel to keep on running Effed Up Creations. And it's good to see you back. We have not seen you in a while. And I completely understand. Life gets in the way of so many things for a lot of people. Sometimes it almost gets in the way of us being able to run this show. So we entirely understand that folks can get busy and get distracted from the stream. But we are happy to have you back tonight. I hope you've been enjoying the news. I hope it's just like you left it, because we always try and make sure that this thing is pretty much the same tried and true formula every single day for 1,007 days. And hopefully today is no different. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that has addressed that incredibly well. And a big welcome back to you, Effed Up Creations. I hope you're able to stick around a little bit more from time to time as the months march on towards the beginning of the next year. And so with that, thank you once again, and we are on to the next one.
And this one's going to go to Butchie the Crouton, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Butchie, for that support indeed. And I don't see a comment attached to this one, but sadly, I don't think there's nothing to address. So, Butchie, thank you very much once again. And Enforcer, what say you?
I gotta thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, Butchie, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible. You're the reason why we're here right now, Butchie777. You've been here for a long time, and I gotta thank you so much, Butchie the Crouton, Butchie777, as I know you, for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And I love to see the hippo putting up a V for victory. And so, thank you so much once again. I hope that this addressed that incredibly well. And also, let's see here. Before we move on, I saw Destiny Edgington say, let's see, that is, let's see here. Let me. I thought his channel was for Ukraine. Nah, not really. His channel is for himself, and if he can quite truly just grift anything he thinks he can, he'll go with it. That's why his channel just drops Ukraine whenever it needs to, on like at a moment's notice. Like, I want you to pay attention to that when you can. He'll drop Ukraine for American politics. He'll drop it over a tornado. He'll drop it over a hurricane. He'll drop it over a local dam collapsing. He'll drop it for rapper beefs. He will drop Ukraine for literally any and every purpose that he can find, if it does not benefit him the day he wakes up. Like, that guy is the guy I would say is the least for Ukraine in this entire sphere, is that guy. Do his remaining small little group of viewers realize that? No. I think they're too brain dead too. Like I'm totally fine with alienating that group of people. I think they truly are too brain dead to realize that at this point. But does it matter? Not really. But still, I hope that does address that well, because we you know, once you see that guy's true colors, everything that he blames and accuses everyone else of, he is guilty of literally doing all of that. Not even in the shadows. It's in broad daylight. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here is going to go to, as I try to get back to the spreadsheet once again, this one goes to Brettley Boost, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Brettley, for that support. He says, keep doing the good work, fellas, and I have to go to sleep, but take one from the live chat and long live the LSA.
Hey, and long live the LSA, and a good night to you. I hope you sleep well, incredibly well, a long-lasting sleep. And I gotta thank you once again for the incredible support and helping this channel, Brettley Boost, to keep on running. And of course, we will make sure to keep up the great work. And what do we have for a live chat, Matthew?
All right, so the live chat question is going to go to John Person, who said, what do you think a NATO response might look like?
My NATO response? Well, it would have to be in response to a Russian attack. There's never a preemptive attack in NATO's agenda. So if Russia was to attack NATO would most likely respond by trying to immediately create some sort of a defense south of the Casualty Gap. We would probably allow the Casualty Gap to be taken, at least in the short notice. There would be a counter. That probably would be one of the most important things in the immediate NATO battle plan, is to reopen the Casualty Gap and also push the Russians into Kaliningrad so that we can open up a large supply corridor through this area. That would be one of the more important things. We would also probably see a large missile and seed attack start happening immediately with the available air forces in the area to make sure that the air battle is pretty much won and dominated by the Western powers in NATO from that point forward. Because as long as the West controls the skies over the Russian front lines and even behind it, we pretty much control the tempo and pace at which battles are fought, because our air power is indomitable. It's truly the largest, most powerful on the earth. If we control the skies above the enemy, we pretty much control the ground below as well. And so with that in mind, that's probably what the first opening actions will look like. Probably some defensive blocking actions down on the ground while the air forces begin to immediately fight over the skies, waiting for more reinforcements to arrive, so that way by the time the air forces clear out most of the heavy work on the ground, the armed forces can come through on the ground and mop up. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. Thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And thank you for sponsoring that live chat. And if you're asleep and hearing this tomorrow, thank you once again for the support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here goes to Santiago Flores, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Santiago, once again for that support as always. And he says, good evening, and this is for the coffee fund, and a good choice for ground news. I consulted and highly recommended it. And to pick a question from the live chat, and gracias.
Hey, and thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. It's very nice of you. It's very nice of you to support this channel. And we actually had a sponsorship on our video today for one of the first times ever. We're trying to raise some funds in the background for some more projects coming around in the future, specifically the orchestra projects, at least on my end, because we are trying to really, start working on those projects a little quicker. And so that's a pretty good way to be able to start finding the funds without having to have people fundraise for them, because we really don't want that to be on y'all. We would rather do it another way. So beyond that, I thank you so much for the support, and it's great to hear that you really like that one, because it's a good one for sure, no doubt about it. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
All right, so the live chat question here is going to go to Eugene Minton, who said, any news on that biological weapon stuff regarding Russia as of late, and didn't they start up their labs again?
They started up the labs, but that's all we know at the moment. We've never heard of them using biological weapons on the front. We haven't heard of them using biological weapons around the world, for that matter. We just know that they've opened them back up, and they're building a couple of them, and that's about it at this point. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next super chat goes to Matthew, who puts in a $20 donation. And it's good to see Matthew in the live chat. Hello to a fellow Matthew. And he puts in a $20 donation. He said, I came across your stream for the first time last week, and I've been lurking since then. But this is such an informative channel. And I just want to say thank you all for your work, and much love from Australia, mate.
And thank you for the support, and thank you for supporting this channel just a weekend, Matthew, and watching from Australia. You're one of our Australian viewers. There's actually a lot of them, interesting enough, so you might run into them down there. But beyond that, I got to thank you so much for finding this channel to be very informative. We try our best to get the most informative news out every single day and to make sure that it's well researched and that we're speaking from a logical standpoint. And I got to thank you so much for appreciating that. Some people don't appreciate that. Some people want to say that we don't know what we're talking about. And in response to that, if they knew what they were talking about, how come they don't have a successful YouTube channel? You know what I mean? If they were smart, people would know, you know? But beyond that, I got to thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep it running. Thank you for the kind words as well. And of course, welcome to the Lee Spring Army, and I hope you like it here because it's a very nice community. And so with that, thank you so much once again, and we are on to the next one.
And our next one here goes to Brian Champion, who puts in a 20 as well. And thank you very much, Brian, for the support. He said that Russia already hit the Nord Stream pipeline and dropped munitions within NATO borders and cut critical undersea communication lines. So really, has Russia already started with NATO? And any of these actions could have been a cause for war.
Technically, they could have been, but how they were assessed one at a time, they never were enough to invoke Article 5 over. So technically, they haven't because we didn't invoke Article 5 over it, so none of that was worth starting a war over, at least according to the powers that be at the moment. And so while you could argue that that certainly would be the case, not really so. It seems as though we were just waiting for a direct armed attack, and that's what we would consider to be an actual beginning of a war. And also, I know that you'll probably say, well, the drones, how about the drones hitting? And, you know, there's always enough of a question about whether what that was intentional or not that we've never considered that an act of war. So until they actually fire a cruise missile or a ballistic missile into NATO territory in the dozens and start attacking NATO that way, it seems as though we're going to be generally letting most of that pass. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, and thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Panama Floyd, who puts in a 20 also. And huge shout to Panama for that support. Longtime channel legend, by the way. Tuche. He said, with the new Georgian government, whether legit or not, being pro-Orkan, do y'all see a second wave of Russian refugees fleeing from Georgia to elsewhere?
There really isn't anywhere else for them to flee, because Turkey will not accept them, Armenia will not accept them, and Azerbaijan will probably not accept them either. And Iran certainly will sure as hell will not accept them. So there really isn't anywhere else for them to go. They're kind of stuck there at the moment, and so I think regardless of whether they really want to leave or not, they're probably not going to be able to leave. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, at least in my opinion. And thank you once again for the support and helping this channel to keep it running. That's a good question, and I hope I was able to give a fairly good answer to it. And we are on to the next one.
And also, by the way, like I was, unfortunately, I don't know, I wasn't actually telling this out loud. I was actually talking in the live chat here. I was saying that I might end up maybe just trying a PC to see if maybe that will resolve some of our connection issues. I'm beginning to think that it maybe is Discord, because I'm literally getting like perfect internet right now, over 500 upload and download. So that's way more than enough to run Discord and everything else. And also, there's nothing, you know, clogging up the computer at all. Everything else is running pretty smoothly here. So, you know, I don't know. Like, y'all let me know in the live chat. Should I try a PC and see if that fixes it, or simply stick with the Mac and maybe one day when we get better internet, it'll be okay then? Maybe so, because I did not have any issues whatsoever when I was like on the move with the Mac and I was using mobile hotspot. Like no issues at all with the lag or anything. But yet here in our Enforcer HQ 2.0, I'm having internet issues just like we were in 1.0. So I don't know at this point. I'm kind of confused.
I'd have to quickly say I have a witness here to say it's not my computer, because when I was on the computer last night on the day off, I actually ended up playing a game with a viewer that's here right now, which is Fiuma. And I was running we were running some pretty graphically intensive games, at least I think one of them was, and I was streaming it to him through Discord and also in a call with him, and there was never a tinge of lag the entire call. And so, you know, while I was not running a stream on OBS at that time, the game itself was eating up probably the same amount of memory that a stream would be when it's running. So it seems that it may be maybe a Mac issue, or it may just purely be a Discord issue. Although I'm doubting it's Discord, because whenever I'm in a call with literally anyone else, I can be doing anything else that is very consumptive on the computer, and it does not create lag or call issues.
Well, I mean, I was just looking here because I really don't know like PC costs, because I've been on Mac for a long time. Like it's been a long time since I've had a PC. But I was looking here at what they cost. I'm like, that's my main question. What do these cost? Apparently, for the same cost as my MacBook, I can get a Intel Core i9, the highest end CPU. I can get the NVIDIA 4090 GPU, 64 gigs of RAM, and also 4 terabytes of SSD. So apparently, I knew Macs were overpriced, but apparently they're very overpriced. But this is like the highest end Corsair tower you can get for the same cost as a Mac laptop. So
see, that's why I've been telling you. That's why I've been telling you, man. Like it's garbage.
But see, though, I don't really need it. I don't really need like a 4090 mind you. I don't game, so I don't need that kind of graphics
Yeah,
power.
but-
Like the MacBook has plenty of graphics.
You lying and you know it. You was talking the other day about replacing the Xbox with a PC. Don't you lie. But there's so many games you can play. You know, man, there's these great games out there on the PC that they don't release on Xbox. There's many of them. I mean, there's so many good ones. It's crazy, really. And like I gotta tell you, man, you gotta get a PC. The PCs are just better, and it opens up a whole new world for you as far as like spending your free time with a hobby or something for fun. I'm like, but you gotta get rid of the Macs, man. The Macs just
Maybe
ain't good.
so, man, but look, like this tower right here, like I'm not like like trying to save energy like like crazy or anything like that. Like I would like to save energy if possible, but this PC I think draws 200 watts or something like that, which is insane. Like that's a lot of power. But the Mac barely pulls like a fraction of that, and it has like a much more powerful CPU, but the graphics card's not quite there. But I just don't know, man. Like I might have to give it a try. Maybe. I don't know. I don't know, man. I might have to give it a try and see, because
it might
this
be
lag is getting annoying.
It might not be sucking up enough juice, Matthew, to really get like full performance, man. I'm just saying, like, it's a little weird to me, man, that Macs are supposed to be top of the line and they can't play a simple computer game. Like, that's always been a little weird to me, because at that point, it's like, do you have a good computer or do you have a good Excel sheet machine? It's like, to me, it sounds like it's an Excel sheet machine, because if all you can do is just browser related things and maybe some plugin or app related things, it's like that isn't really a computer. Like a computer is supposed to be versatile and be able to do everything. It's supposed to be able to do all like my computer can do everything that yours does, and it can play games. And it's like that's an additional feature added on that Macs just can't do. And it's like a Mac is not like that's like saying, like I buy a car and it's capable of driving everywhere except for in the rain. And then there's another car that is the same price and it can do everything that yours can and also drive in the rain. And it's like, at that point, it's like, how can we say the other car is better, which would be a Mac, when the other car of comparable price can do everything and more, that the Mac can do? It's like, that's why I just don't like Macs.
Well, also, the other catch is, I'm not trying to like go into super detail here, but the only other catch is some people are saying just keep the laptop and the desktop. I can't do that. Like that's way too much money being like stored in computers like that, and obviously computers don't hold their value that well. So I'm going to have to choose one or the other. I'm going to either get the desktop and get rid of the laptop, or keep the laptop otherwise, because the laptop's way too expensive to keep this thing from using a desktop full time. So I don't know. It's going to be a little bit of a dilemma with that, because then I lose my ability to be mobile if I need to. So it's tricky. But I'm not going to lie. Looking at the desktop tower, it does look kind of cool. It's like a really cool like RGB on the thing. But I don't know. I'll have to give it some thought and maybe think about it. But anyways, time to move on, as Doug said right here, or someone said right here in the live chat. He said time to move on. I don't think it was Doug. It was somebody else.
It was RJ.
But anyways. Yeah, it was RJ. Sorry, Doug. I didn't mean to, pick on you. But moving on to our next super chat here. This one goes to Zyper Sniper 1, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Zyper Sniper, for that support. He said, coffee fund for the enforcers, and keep up the great work, and long live the West. And a question for the chat, please.
And long live the West, and long live the Lee Spring Army, and long live the Republic. And I got to thank you so much for the support. And I got to thank you for supporting the coffee fund and helping this channel to keep on running. And I also got to say, thank you for enjoying this channel. I mean, I know a lot of people enjoyed this channel. 71,150 people have watched this stream so far. It's only been 2 hours, 30 minutes. Kind of crazy to think that many people have watched. I mean, hell, you know what's crazy, folks? I mean, tonight at the peak, there was 12.5 thousand people here. Do you know how many people that is? Do you know how many people that is? I'll tell y'all how many people that is. Largest auditorium in the U.S. Let me go here. Let's see here. Wait a minute, hold up. They're not telling me this. Hold up. No way. Hang on. Let me look at this, man. Let me look at this here. No way. I just saw something about Birmingham, Alabama on this list, and I was like, there's no way in hell. Okay, so anyways, moving on from that, though. Let me go show y'all this, all right? I don't know what this thing's loading. It's loading viruses. But nevertheless, we, on the stream tonight, would have to go to the Idaho Center at the Brigham Young, Idaho campus that would fit 15,000 people to be able to fit the audience that we had live on the stream tonight at the peak. That's crazy. Like, no other auditorium in America would have been able to fill up enough. Well, we would have overfilled it by quite a large margin if it was in literally any other place rather than the top 2 largest auditoriums in America, which is pretty crazy to think about, that we're getting that many people on a stream. It's crazy because I don't know if I would have stage fright in front of all of y'all if y'all were actually physically in front of me. I've gotten used to talking to this many people, and Matthew has too, on a computer. I don't know what it would be like to talk in front of like 12,000 people, 12.5 thousand people in real life. I mean, what's crazy is that the truth is that the size of the groups of people that we're having here every night nowadays are about the size of your average presidential election political rally, where a presidential candidate goes out and starts to speak to their voters. That's about the same number of people who was here tonight watching this, which is just weird because it's kind of a normal night these days. But still, I got to thank you all for being here. I got to thank everyone for supporting this channel, and I got to thank you so much for being one of those people and enjoying it enough that you would support it and help it to be possible. And so with that, a big thanks to you.
Man,
so
I'm
much.
not gonna lie. If we had like 7,000 people or something in an auditorium and we were trying to do the show live, I'd be like, oh my god, like, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to focus like with 7,000 people like that. Like, you know, when you see like, for example, like what's somebody that gets up in front of a crowd that large on a regular basis, maybe like a popular stand-up comedian or something like that, where they're actually having to like talk and think on their feet, because we're not singing or something like that where they already know the song, they're just like rehearsed it and they're doing it again. We're having to like come up with stuff on the spot. We're doing commentary, we're talking about videos, we're showing things, and sometimes we're going off script to like address a question. So that would be a doozy. Like maybe one day we'll end up doing that. We'll get used to it, like we've done on the stream as well. But shoo, that would be a doozy. 7,000 people in an auditorium.
Man, you know what's kind of crazy though when you think about it, man, is that every single night we do ad lib for 3.5 hours. I do ad lib for like 3.5 hours, and you're also like here with me adding on to it. But what's weird about that, man, is that you'll hear like comedians and they're like, man, I tried out a new minute of a comedy segment, and we're having to come up with like a 3.5 hours of everything. Material, content, news, information, analysis on the spot, because we don't have enough time in a day to be able to sit here and really mull this stuff over and figure out what we're going to say. That's what we have to come up with it all on the spot. Like when you're hearing us talk on this stream, if people ever like, and this is something I think that people are critical with us about and they don't understand it. Like when I said last night, this was one that kind of aggravated me. Someone said, oh, this guy must be an idiot and can't read because he said validification instead of validify. It's like I'm having to come up with all of the stuff I'm saying live on air. And so when people are like, dang, you're talking really fast, like, can you slow down? It's like, no, it's like I'm having to figure this stuff out as I'm going. That's why it comes out really quickly, is because I'm trying to keep up with mentally what I'm thinking and what I should be putting out. And that's why I talk so fast on air. I still don't talk as fast as Ben Shapiro. Thanks. But still, it is pretty fast. Nevertheless, though, and that's also why I say nevertheless a lot, because people will be like, nevertheless, meanwhile, and it's like, yeah, sometimes you get caught into loops, you know, when you have to do everything live. Some things are just really easy and convenient to say. But it takes a lot to do this every day as far as being quick-witted, because if we were not quick-witted, the show couldn't run daily. Like, it just could not, because we would have to figure out and game plan everything we were going to say, try and script it, and scripting a show this long, we would literally be up. We would never sleep. And we'd be up all the time because we would have to be writing like multi-hundred page scripts for what we were going to say and do. And then we can't do that because we have to get the news fresh as it is each day, and then come up with this whole news segment fresh for 3.5 hours. And then also answer questions, and any questions could be thrown in, and we have to come up with the answers on the spot. So like all of the rabbit holes that we come up with on the stream, those are literally just pulled out of my ass. Like I've got no, like, there's no script, like, not like that though, no Diddy, but like, like, there's like, I just have to pull them out of thin air. Like when people come up with something like, what do you think about, like Gunfight 61 is probably the best one, because those are like literally putting me on the spot, because there's so many different days in history thing, and I'm like, I gotta find one of these and really hone in on it, and like throw out like a good 7-minute rabbit hole on it, and somehow we do that. It's very lucky. But still, I love doing it. It's incredibly fun, but I don't think a lot of people get that, because when people are like, oh, you know, like they have a complaint, it's like, we're not doing this like off of a script. This isn't pre-planned. Everything we're doing is live. We've done the minimal amount of prep, and even then it takes hours to get the stream ready, and that's the minimal level. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And let's see. right when you start with there's a ton of news day, get ready, grab your drink, and chip and dip. Yeah, that's kind of it. Like, that also helps me to categorize our news for the day. Like, when I do that, like, just to, like, give you all the whole process, I don't know how we're covering the news before we're about to go live, like 10 minutes before the stream. Like, I compile all of it, I look at it, and I'm like, okay, this is like everything that happened today, and I look at it a good bit to understand it. And then as the minutes are counting by, I'm chit-chatting with Matthew before the stream, and we're talking about, you know, whatever we're talking about. And at the same time in my head, I'm trying to think, how am I going to structure this tonight to go over it? And so when the stream starts and Matthew gives y'all like the recap of the title or the recap of his banner that he put in the chat, I'm sitting there and I'm like, okay, now I'm going to do this. So like tonight, for example, I'm coming up with off the bat how we're going to cover this thing. So I'm like, you know, NATO's preparing for war. Meanwhile, the Russian economy is collapsing, and I start trying to categorize each segment on the spot, so that way it's a very free-flowing but still sensible story that's being constructed out of everything that's happened in a day. All that has to be done on the spot. And then from that point on, all of the additional analysis and stuff that I'm saying on air, it's all being analyzed on the spot. Like, it's just, there's the information. I thought about it a little bit earlier, putting together the dots that we have on air. This is the most likely analysis. And then I may even throw in other options and then their likelihood. All that's being done live. Like, it's not like other channels where it's like a pre-made video and they do like one every 5 days and they really think it out and they really plan it out. Like, everything I'm saying is live. So if something is wrong, it's wrong because I'm trying to figure it out as I'm saying it live. And then that's why I'm very open to people correcting me, because it's being done on the spot. If it's wrong, it probably is wrong, because I'm trying to remember it all off the top of my head. So that's it's a really like in-depth thing to do, and when I think about it, it actually starts to sound overwhelming that we do this every single night, and we've done this at least like 890 or 900 or so times, like excluding the Mondays that we've been off and other days that we've had to skip. It's been a lot of these streams, and we somehow are able to get on here every single night and just go for 3.5 hours. Like, and that's another crazy thing, is that no one on television is expected to do that. We have way more stamina, way more endurance, and not only that, way more mental agility than really anyone you see on television. Which, you know, that's not to toot our own whistle, but how television works, all those people you'll see on screen, like Sean Hannity and let's see, Aaron Burnett on CNN, they have teleprompters behind the cameras. And so they're reading off of teleprompters, and they've had writers come up with their jokes. They've had writers come up with their general bullet points. And while they may try and, you know, ad-lib here and there, it's very tight leashed, and they're generally working on a proper framework. That's also why, to explain why the news is always so late on mainstream news networks, that's usually why their news is 24 to 36 hours late compared to us, is because a whole bunch of writers behind the scenes are having to figure out how to compile that and pretty much just hand it straight to the hosts, so that way they can read it off on air. That's why it takes so long for them to get to it. We don't do any of that. We just skip all that, and we just, you know, I just memorize like a million different things, and then we go on air and we shit it out in front of all y'all, for all of y'all to get the news on what happened exactly today, not tomorrow. Damn, son. But that's still how all this is done, just to try and explain at least my part of the job and everything that we have to do with that. And that's also, and also on top of that, we don't only have to like just, you know, throw out all of this news, like 2 hours worth of it. All of your television hosts, they're only on air for about an hour at a time. They may be on maybe 2 hours or 3 hours out of the day, but only at 1 hour at a time. We have to be on for 3.5 hours straight, and we have to have all of this straight in our head mentally, with no script, no prep, no writers, no nothing, and then we have to get on here and do it for 3.5 hours straight. I have a feeling, Matthew, that if we went on to live television at this point, if we were ever invited on and anyone tried to pin us down on something, I feel like we'd be a lot more quick working than any of them would be, because we just have, like, quite literally, like, someone in normal television would have had to have been on their show daily without end for 10 years at this point to rack up the amount of hours that we've gotten in about 3.
Yeah, I would say so. And to me, it's really not about the amount of hours necessarily. It's the quality within the hours. And I would say that we're definitely topping anything the mainstream's putting out. And I will say this, at the beginning, obviously the Enforcer monologues for most of the stream. I do the videos. That's my real main thing that I do. But the live streams are primarily Andrew. But even at the beginning, when it was kind of rough around the edges a little bit, it wasn't exactly up to, like, I guess you could say mainstream quality by then, and that's not a huge bar to like get over. But over time, like, we've surpassed, in my opinion, in my humble opinion, we've surpassed the mainstream quality probably by at least twice, in my opinion. But that's only with like years of doing it and things like that. But it's just gotten so much better over time. And what's crazy is this: we're just two guys who prepare the news and do our research every single day, do the videos and the live streams, and right now we're competing with mainstream news. That's crazy. That just shows you how lax the mainstream has gotten, and also how low of a quality they've gotten, because they're trying to tie politics into everything. They're not really focusing on actual real news. So I would say that we're outdoing them, man. I would say we're doing pretty decent.
You know what's crazy? You know what's crazy is, like, it's for y'all to know, we don't compare ourselves to mainstream news channels because that would be ludicrous. We compare ourselves to how well news channels perform here on YouTube running live streams, because they compete, like, whether people think it or not, they compete with us in a different medium, which is YouTube live streams, because every single news company on YouTube runs live streams of their news on YouTube. So it's pretty much like a mirror of their main show on TV, just sent over to YouTube on a live stream. And so every single day we compete with them, and it takes an entire building of people in Los Angeles at CBS. And let me go find their building. Where is their building? It's kind of near the Grove, isn't it? Let's see here. Where is CBS?
CBS, their studios out in Los Angeles?
Yeah, remember we passed it.
Oh, yeah. I know where they are, but I couldn't spot them on a map.
Yeah, here we go. Here it is. Here's CBS right here. So this is a CBS.
Television City.
CBS is one of the largest, well, it's kind of one of the largest news companies in America. Technically, Fox News beats out every other one in the ratings, so Fox is technically the biggest. But CBS, Fox News, CNN, all of these companies, they have massive news studios like these. And they have thousands, I believe hundreds of staff, in tons of hosts, an unlimited number, and it's usually a hundreds of millions of dollars business operation to keep this thing running every year. And it's crazy to think that these companies, you know, like when we think about it, and I'm not trying to toot or whistle here with this whole segment, these companies get bested by us. We do not make hundreds of millions a year doing this. There's just two of us. We do not have a major studio, and we do not have a mainstream news segment. Nevertheless, we still dominate them in the live stream numbers almost every single time they're running a stream. The only time they've beaten us recently was during the month leading up to the presidential election and the couple of weeks after, and they're already starting to drop off pretty quickly after that. And it's just bizarre, because it's like, come on, can't y'all come up with something better? I mean, y'all have got literally hundreds of people at least working for these companies. It's like, can't y'all come up with better segments, like better news? Can y'all make it less vapid, more interesting? I mean, they don't have that much competition out there. I mean, if they really gave it a try, and we've already seen that some networks, like, not to call them out directly, but CNN has almost copied verbatim at some point. Like, my mom called me one time because she was watching the news with our grandmother off in another state, and she called me and she was like, oh my god, y'all, like, one of the hosts on CNN is almost like doing your thing. And we pulled it up, and they were watching a clip that they pretty much grabbed off Reddit like we do, and the host was trying to react to it the way we do and trying to add commentary to it like we do. And I'm like, come on, like, it's like, but then they didn't even know what they were talking about. It's like, I don't know what the hosts do with their free time. Like, I don't know, do they just go out and eat dinners and rub, like, elbows with just other people or something and socialize? I don't know. Like, they don't read because they don't really know what they're talking about much when they get around to it. I have no idea. Like, I don't know. But this is a long rant to say I think we give the mainstream news a run for their money. That's pretty much all I'm trying to say. It doesn't take a lot to do that, though, but you would still think they would be able to give us a run for our money, considering that we don't make as much as them, and not only that they have hundreds of staff. That's all I'm trying to say here. That's all I'm saying here. But still, I hope that does address that fairly well. I thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. I hope that addresses it a little well, at least to, like, what we have to do every single night to keep this stream rolling live on air. And so thank you so much once again, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next we got, we got a 50 New Zealand donation from Botmaster Karma, who just threw that in and said, I love your works, lads, and for the pizza fun. And thank you very much, Botmaster, for the kind words, by the way.
Hey, and I thank you so much for the support, Botmaster Karma, for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And I gotta say, Thank you so much for loving our work, and thank you for supporting the Pizza Fund all the way from New Zealand. New Zealand is a pretty cool place. We actually saw a documentary, I think it was on the Smithsonian Channel today, about New Zealand railways in the Southern Islands, which is pretty cool. I was really impressed with it, actually. It looked quite nice. But beyond that, I do have to thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running and helping us to get a good, delicious pizza. I personally love pizza of every types. I love Detroit style, New York style, and Chicago style. Really the big three. But there's a couple of other smaller ones, like, let's see, I forgot what it was called, but it's like the cold cut version of the pizza. I haven't tried that one, though. One day I will. I will give it a shot and let folks know what I think of it. But nevertheless, I thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running, because folks like you help to make this thing possible. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here is going to go to none other than Hokey Redneck, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Mr. Hokey, for that support. He said, also, didn't the Red Baron fly a tri-wing plane?
Yes, he actually flew a, you know what, I'm not going to say the name because I'm going to butcher it and it's going to sound like something else. I'm just going to show you the name of the plane. Here it is right here. That's the name, FOKKERDR1. So there you go. That's the name of it. You can actually see the prototype right here. Really cool. Really nice. But one plane that actually did a little bit better than it that a lot of people don't know about, because this is the famous triplane of World War I, was actually the Sopwith triplane. Let me pull that up right here. Here we go. The Sopwith triplane was based, kind of inspired off of the DR1 from that company in Germany, which I will not be able to pronounce correctly. But they decided that the triplane design was a lot more maneuverable and also a bit better of a dogfighter. So towards the latter end of the war, the very latter end of the war, Sopwith produced, I believe, a couple of hundred of these. But it was not as popular and not as common as the Sopwith Camel and the Sopwith Pup, which were produced in the thousands. Also, then there was a whole bunch of other versions of aircraft from France, like the Nieuports and also the Spads, which were also in the thousands as well. But it was not the only triplane to exist. But yes, if you're talking about the famous one that the Red Baron flew, and let me go get you that livery, because actually, they don't have it on Wikipedia. Isn't that crazy? Like, that's absolutely crazy right here, man. Crazy. Crazy, I tell you. You'd think that they had it. You know what I mean? Well, let's see here. Let me go find y'all his plane then. Let me go find y'all a picture of it, or at least a reproduction of it. And there you go. There's a replica of it at the, let's see, the Berlin Air Show in 2006. But that's generally what it would look like. So yes, if you're asking about that plane, it was a triplane, not a biplane. But with that, thank you so much for giving us support and helping this channel to keep on running. I hope that this addressed that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here is going to go to none other than Marion Demert, also longtime channel legend, by the way, put in a $20 donation, and Marion said, pizza fun. Man, we're getting the pizza fun going wild tonight, by the way. They said, thank you both for all the work. Slav Ukraine and Hiram Slava. And thank you very much, Marion.
And thank you so much for the support, Marion Demon. I got to thank you for supporting the Pizza Fund. We love pizza. We really do. And you know what, Matthew? It's time to look at the types of pizzas. Types of pizzas. We got to find ourselves a couple of pizzas. Holy moly. There's actually a lot of different types of pizza here, Matthew. List of pizza varieties by country. Let's see here. Well, you know, let's go to the United States of America. That's what we're really here for, right? You know, we're not here for all that other stuff. Let's see. Pizza in the United States, an entire subculture upon its own. It has its own Wikipedia page. Don't you like that? I like to see it. Also, let's see here. The first pizzeria in the United States was Lombardi's, which is still open to this day on 32 Spring Street in the corner of Mott Street in the Nolita neighborhood of Manhattan. Well, maybe one day we'll go there, Matthew, and try this Lombardi's pizza, considering it's the first.
I would like some of that. That sounds good, man. And, you know, I want that New York pizza. Like, that's the pizza we really don't have around here, like the proper New York style, like the real type with the real sauce on it. That's the one I want.
Let's see here. Distinct regional types developed in the 20th century, including Buffalo, which does not have a Wikipedia article, California. Ugh.
Whoa, what the hell? Is that avocado on the pizza, man?
Yeah.
What the hell? It's not even cooked.
Let's see. It's a style of pizza that combines New York and Italian thin crust with toppings from the California cuisine cooking style. I call this vomit. I call that vomit. Like, that just doesn't look like it belongs.
No.
That looks kind of good.
Not really. No, it looks like
And,
junk.
I'm trying to give it a little go. Chicago style pizza, which is kind of like a lasagna or some sort of a
Ugh.
dude, don't diss it. It's good. I like it. Matty
I
didn't
don't
really.
like it, man. It's like eating a soup or a pie or something like that. I didn't care for Chicago style pizza that much. It was okay, but I wouldn't really have it again personally. I like that thin crust.
I'm not going to lie. I liked it. All right. I listen. I'm going to be the one outside. I liked it. Chicago style, not bad. Then there's Detroit style. Many of y'all would know this from school. These are the kinds that you get in school. Also, these are the kinds that usually are the quick, ready-to-eat ones, the ones that you can cook in the oven, frozen. Usually those are Detroit style. Not bad. I mean, like, not bad at all. Then there's Greek-style pizza. No pictures provided. It's apparently godless. No pictures. But we also have the New Haven-style pizza. This thing looks like...
man, that looks good. That's like a tomato pie.
This thing looks like it got nuked in a hellfire.
It looks good, man. I can guarantee that pizza's busting.
Man, one side of it was not facing the nuclear explosion. That's the side on the right. The other was facing the nuclear explosion on the left. It was cooked to a crisp. But beyond that, that one doesn't look that bad. Then there's the New York style, the famous, the classic. That's pretty much the only style of pizza you get from the major pizza chains. And then finally, last but not least, we have St. Louis style pizza, which honestly, that looks pretty good.
It looks good, and they cut it in squares too, so that's a little interesting.
It's fairly interesting, that is. And also, maybe one day we'll be able to try them all. I haven't tried them all. But still, let's see. 13% of the United States consumes pizza on any given day. So we are a big pizza country. We love pizza around here. But nevertheless, it's a great thing. It's wonderful. Look, there's another Chicago deep dish. Look at that. It's amazing. There's a Detroit.
Oh.
There's a Detroit right there. Look at that. New York style pizza. New York. You gotta love New York, baby.
Fold it in half and dip it.
Man, it's pretty good. New York style, American New York style pizzas, not the ones you get overseas. I'm sorry, but they're just not New York style. If you get them and you dip them in some ranch or something like that, you just won't believe the kind of flavor combination that is. Sounds nasty, but it's actually pretty good. But what is this?
Oh, whoa, what the? Quad City. What the hell's Quad City?
It originates from the state of Illinois and Iowa. It includes malt in the crust, tomato sauce made with red chili flakes or cayenne pepper, toppings placed under the cheese, and being cut into strips instead of triangular slices. Huh. I'm not gonna lie.
I don't know about that, man. That ain't looking right.
I'm not gonna lie, that doesn't sound bad though. Like with the freaking red chili flakes and cayenne pepper and the tomato sauce, that sounds pretty good, actually. That sounds pretty freaking good. Look, this was from Fat Boys. This has got to be good. It's named Fat Boys. Like he's lost in the sauce. See?
I just rejoined the call, by the way. The lag's getting terrible, but I don't like this, man. It doesn't look that good.
Well, I mean, I'm not going to be one to turn one down. What the hell? Oh my God, I didn't realize all the different styles. There's Altoona? Oh, this looks nasty. Ew. What is that on top of it? Plastic? That's got to be like American cheese or something, isn't it?
Ugh.
Let's see here.
Maybe it could be.
Yeah, topped with American cheese. Nah, that's a pass from me. Sorry, there's no good pizza with American cheese on top. Sorry to the folks up in Altoona, though, because, Altoona, Pennsylvania is famous for the horseshoe curve, but not for the pizza, apparently. Colorado style? That looks stupid. That's like a snack. That's not even a meal. Ooh, Columbus style. Dude, look at this.
Man, that's the whole reason that Columbus discovered America. He saw this pizza and he came right over here to get it.
Man, I'm telling you. And then we got... I don't know what this is.
Oh my God, it's lag so bad. I can only hear every third word.
I don't know what this is, but I'm sorry the lag's messing with you there. But nevertheless, I hope we kind of addressed the pizza segment well, Marion Demon. And thank you for the support and helping to support our pizza endeavors, because one day we're going to try them all. But still, thank you so much once again. And we are on to the next one. Oh, God. Oh, God.
Oh, well, there goes the lag. Now I heard him say something else, too, so that's not good. That means we're lagging. Enforcer, can you please restart the Discord again, because this is unbearable. I can barely hear the thing.
Oh, my God. I'm going to restart it really quickly. All right, he's back. All right, Matthew, we're on to the next one.
All right. And also, by the way, I think I have a hunch why this is suddenly having a problem. It has the problem like this on the lag every single night around the same time. I think what it might be is the gamers are arriving home from work, and at night is when everybody likes to game on the computer and jump on Discord and talk to their buddies. So I think maybe that's why the Discord servers might be getting overloaded or maybe stressed or something like that, and then we suddenly start having lag. That might be a good theory, a good working theory, so as gamers. But anyways, jumping into our next one here, we have a $20 super chat from Romulo V, and thank you very much, Romulo, for that support. He said, greetings from the 101st Airborne Division, and the more we send, the more we escalate. And like our brigade commander told us yesterday, be ready to fight, as our unit is scheduled to deploy to Europe soon, and this is all concerning.
And I thank you for the support, Romulo5. And really cool to hear that we got someone here from the famous 101st, which I believe nowadays is a air assault unit. Let's see if I'm remembering correctly, not a airborne unit in the traditional sense. Still doesn't matter. The 101st Airborne has an amazing history. But beyond that, I would have to agree. It is a little concerning, but still, it is something that we must do as a republic to stand for our interests around the world. We are not going to let the Russians triumph over us because we're simply scared of a confrontation. We will do the right thing, and I hope that it doesn't lead to a conflict. I hope they understand that we're not going to be backing off of what's right, but at the same time, we have to be there to do what we need to do. We have our interests involved, but still, I thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that well, and a big shout out once again, Romula 5, to the Chicken Men, the most incredible unit in the U.S. Army, including the 82nd Airborne, which is also an incredibly famous one as well. But still, big thanks to you once again. I hope that does address that the best I can, and we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Joyce Morris, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Joyce, for the support. And I do not see a comment attached to it. But of course, big thanks to you once again. And also, let me check something here. That might be Joyce's first ever super chat. Let me go back and take a look because I need to know this for certain because I might be getting a little bit tired. And I guess what? I think I am getting a little bit tired unless YouTube's glitching or something like that. Apparently, Joyce has put in one before. So they put in a super sticker, said, thanks for being you, with a YouTube pair loving itself in the mirror. Oh my God. But Enforcer, what say you?
Hey, and again, thank you so much for the support, Joyce, and helping this channel to keep on running. And thank you for being you and supporting this channel and helping us to keep this thing running. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that has addressed that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And also, by the way, folks, just by the way, I'm not taking a shot at gamers, by the way. Like, Discord should have better, like, servers. If this is indeed a Discord problem, we can confirm that sometime. They should have better servers than this, or somebody, or the ISP we have should have better internet or something like that, because it's ridiculous. I'm connected to Ethernet, and we're still having issues. Like, it's crazy. So, it's not the gamer's fault. Like, if you're playing GTA or something like that, and you're still waiting on GTA 6, I'm not blaming on you. It's just happenstance. And like B. Liat said in the live chat, Matt, your internet is shit. That could be the answer. But anyways, moving on here to our next one. This one goes to Steve T, who puts in a 20. And thank you, Steve. He said, if you could go back in time and tell your younger self something, what relationship would you recommend to have avoided and why? And well, that's a tough one. Any question? And mine would have been avoid dating the Italian. Look great, but just hard work, as Steve said.
I would have to say, actually, that's a very easy one because it's a very recent one. I've never had a relationship with anyone where I just regretted every single moment of it and was like, man, I just wish that I had never dealt with that person or those people until recently. Actually, Matthew can tell you all that because we've always grown up, we've always been around people from the South, which or, our people, like, we relate to them, we joke with them, we all get each other. But recently, there was a group of people that we ended up running into that were our next door neighbors for a time, and we tried to get along with them the best we could. But every single time we dealt with them, it was like pulling teeth to socially interact with them. And my general thing is that I don't give up on people because of that. I'm like, oh, maybe they're shy, maybe they're introverted, give them a little bit of chance, they'll warm up, and then they'll be really cool people. But then about an entire year goes by, and they're not improving, they're about the same. And so Matthew and me are trying to figure out what's up with them. Matthew gets sick of them. And then I was like, don't be sick of them. Like, I'm sure they're just very introverted or something, but they're weird. Like, they're weird, but maybe they're introverted or something like that. And so finally, to cut it all short, they're like this is my first experience, by the way, with these kind of people, and it's a very negative kind of an experience. They were alpha Chad Andrew Tate people. That's what we find out in the end. That's the kind of people they were. You know, like their only worth is what they wear on their wrist. Like if they don't have a Rolex, a Rollie, they're nobody. You know, they have to put on this whole front. They have to wear the mink. You know, all this kind of stuff. And you know, and it was the weirdest thing. And I'll have to tell y'all, if I could go back just 2 years at this point, I would say never talk to the next door neighbors. That was a mistake. And they're like,
Man, I'll tell you what, that was one to regret. I will agree with you on that one. It got so uncomfortable, man. Like that got so uncomfortable. I've never felt so uncomfortable around people except for that one group of folks right there. And you know, just like it feels like a backstabbers is what that was. Like that
yeah,
honestly, we're obviously not naming names or nothing like that, but just not good. Like I've dealt with a lot of people. I've had friends in my life and things like that for obviously since grade school and stuff like that. I've never had a group of people like that quite put me off for whatever reason. I still don't have it really like my finger on the pulse on that one. What was really going on, but it
me
was just
either.
weird.
Yeah, I don't either. It was the weirdest thing ever. And there was just a whole bunch of things that they did that were just hopefully offensive. You know, like this one stuck out to me. I think this was one of the ones that pissed me off more than anything with these people. But we invite them over to our house. You know, like that doesn't happen often because usually we're busy. So we invite them over to the house. We have shepherd's pie cooked up for them along with Yorkshire pudding. So anyone from Britain would know that's a pretty decent meal. And so they're eating it. And so they're acting the entire time like we may have poisoned the food, which doesn't make any sense because I've eaten their food and never acted like it was questionable at all. We cook something for them, then they want to act like it's maybe questionable, and then um, let's see, what's the best way to explain it? I don't want to give away too many details of them, but it was like a family of kids, I guess. Well, kids, they were our age, even a little bit older in some instances, but there were two guys and a girl. So one of the guys skipped out, so one girl came over. They're eating the food that we cooked for them. Took a lot of time to cook for them, you know, and so the girl is eating one of the Yorkshire puddings, takes the tiniest, like literally takes the tiniest crumb of it off, like with her fingers, puts it in her mouth, cringes, and then throws the Yorkshire pudding like it's poisoned into the plate. And I was like, that is like the most offensive thing ever. Like, I'm not an Italian or anything. I'm not like going to beat anyone to death if they don't like something, but like to act like that over something that someone cooked, that's just rude as hell on any level. You know, like that's like I went over to their house one time because I was invited, and they cooked up their food, you know, and some of it was okay. Some of it tasted like shit. I was not going to say that though, because it was like that would just be rude. Like if like one of them, I forgot what it was, but it was just the nastiest thing, and it was covered in honey. And I was about to throw up eating it, but I was like, I'd be damned if I'm going to insult these people in their own house by not eating this damn thing. It was, wait, no, I know what it was. It was literally just a bowl of ricotta cheese with honey on top of it. And it was the nastiest thing. Like the honey and the ricotta cheese did not go together. It was gross. But I was like, I'd be damned if I'm going to be rude to these people in their house. I'm going to eat this whole thing. So I sat there and stomached this thing. I was about to start throwing up by the end of it, but I ate that whole thing because I was not going to get that I was not going to offend them in their own house. And then they came over and did that, and I was like, hell no. I was like, that's the rudest thing I've ever seen. I was like, that just pisses me off to no end, because like I go out of my
Man,
way.
I wasn't even gonna go over there to like get that experience. I wasn't gonna do it. At that point, I'd had enough. I was like, I'm not going over there for this super uncomfortable like hour or 2 hours even of like this like weird, uncomfortable, like weird situation. I was like, I'm not even gonna bother with that. I was just like, I'm gonna find some excuse not to go and just not go over to there and deal with
Well,
it.
well,
Man, I'm not gonna lie to you.
dude,
Like the
I
most
see.
uncomfortable things ever, like I've ever dealt with them.
Wait, hang on. Before, I don't mean to interrupt you there. I think we're dealing with some lag, but I want to say this because some people are like, 2 or 3 year olds can be like that. I'm about to give you all the punchline here. They're in their 20s. Like the person who did that's like 24 or 25 or something. Like it's like you're too old to be doing this. Like this is like what children do. It's like I would now like to have that little impulse control to claim like because they claim that we were their best friends. But to have that little impulse control, and they did a million things like that, not just with food, but with everything, to have that little impulse control to be that rude, like that was just annoying. Like that just angers me to no end that they would do stuff like that. And like I kept on trying to overlook it because, not only that, they're not from America. So I was like, maybe it's different for them over in other cultures, and then they start emphasizing how polite and hospitable they are in their culture, and then like, okay, now there's a disconnect. I'm like, this isn't adding up. This isn't making sense. And like, it was just the most annoying thing. Like if I ever was to go back in time and say one relationship is worth avoiding, it would be that one. Like I cannot think of another one that was like that at all in my life. Like everyone else has always been polite, or they've had some sort of modicum of decency. I've never run into anything like that before. Like I literally cannot think of one. But go ahead, Matthew. What were you saying before I accidentally cut you off because of the lag?
Oh no, I'd already gotten it all out. It was just the lag delayed what I was saying by like a few seconds.
Oh, okay. But still, I hope that does address that fairly well. And also, I see some other people saying some other things about certain kinds of relationships with these people. No, I'm sorry. It was never like that. It was more of like a friends thing. But then there was like a whole thing with that. I was like, I don't really get this. Like it was all weird. Like, but I've gone back in time and said, no, don't deal with these people at all. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that well. If you're asking for a deep personal question without putting out too many of their details, because there are 6,000 people here right now, and while these people are not exactly in my good graces, I'm not really into like just like throwing out people's info and like doxing them. But considering you asked a personal question, I wasn't going to answer it without violating or breaching anyone's privacy out there. But with that, thank you once again for support, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next super chat here goes to Stevie Augie in 1992, who puts in a $15 donation, and thank you very much, Stevie, for that support. They said, can confirm a lot of Russians overseas, and my wife is doing an English degree here at the local uni in Perth, Australia, and like 30 to 40% of the people in her course are Russian.
Oh, that's pretty interesting. That's pretty cool, too. And I hope she's doing well. It sounds as though a lot of Russians trying to get the hell away from Russia, which gives an idea that maybe Russia isn't the greatest of places. Perhaps it really isn't, certainly not. But still, thank you for the support and sharing that, because I was wondering, where did a lot of Russians go? Because not all of them could have gone to Georgia and Finland alone. Like, and also the Baltics, like they had to have gone elsewhere. And so I'm guessing that they somehow ended up even leaving Georgia, the Baltics, and Finland and traveling even farther away from Russia, hoping that they never have to return probably. But still, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that the best I can. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here goes to AMX10 Speedy Bang Bang, who puts in a 15. And thank you very much, AMX10, once again for that support. They said, I am still conflicted about what we would do after possible attacks on military facilities on NATO territory, and I still think we would only strengthen Ukraine and not get involved.
And let's see here. Let me make sure to go grab that one. And what was the name on that one again, Matthew? Just so that we can make sure to read it, so I can read the question myself.
It's AMX10 Speedy Bang Bang.
Let's see here. I think he may have thrown in more than one super chat. Let me check. Let's see. No, I think that actually is the one. So let me go and read it. So that way I can make sure to answer that question. Let's see. I'm conflicted about what we should do after possible attacks on military. I think we should only strengthen Ukraine. I would agree with that. AMX 10 Speedy Bang Bang. We're trying to avoid a direct armed conflict with the Russian Federation. Even still, we are still trying to do that. And so, in my opinion, I would have to say, without a doubt, we should not be getting directly involved unless if we have to. And unless if we have to is in literally a last case scenario. The Ukrainians are being overrun. They're being defeated entirely. And that wouldn't happen. But if that did happen, I could see us getting involved at that point as kind of like a last ditch scenario. But I don't think we should be jumping the gun to try and do that, because we're still trying to avoid a world war as best as we can, but not giving anything up and not making it easy for the Russians in the meantime. And so with that, I thank you once again for support. I hope that does address that the best I can. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here goes to not for one, but yet for all, Ukraine, who put in a 10. And thank you very much for the support. They said, I got spotted in the wild today in Jacksonville, Florida, wearing my Enforcer, Make a Russia Small Again shirt. And all we could say was, the Enforcer. And we laughed. And if you know, you know. And FAFO, LSA. And that's very cool to hear that, by the way.
Yeah, that's really cool to hear that. Out in Jacksonville, of all places, in Florida. Not far from us, really. But still, I thank you for the support. That is so cool to hear that two Enforcer fans ran into each other in the wild. Isn't that crazy? I think that's the first fan-on-fan interaction I've heard of ever in the channel's history, where fans actually ran into each other just at random. That is so cool, actually, to hear that happened. I'm really proud of y'all for that. And I got to thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, too. Because folks like you help it to be possible for the Lee Spring Army to continue to grow, so that way we can continue to find more people out there who will join the Lee Spring Army, so that way more fan-on-fan interactions can eventually happen. And so with that, a big thanks to you so much once again. I hope that has addressed that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one here goes to Rebel117, who puts in a 20. And thank you very much, Rebel, for that support. They said, enjoy some coffee made of snow. And let's say the Russian economy completely collapsed. And how would they continue the war, or would it end? And would Ukraine be able to take land back easier?
I got to thank you so much for the support, Rebel117, and helping this channel to keep on running. And I will enjoy some coffee made of snow. And let's see, if the Russian economy completely collapsed, how would they continue the war? They wouldn't be able to continue the war. When an economy collapses, that is the death of a nation and its ability to fight a war, because wars cost an exorbitant amount of money. And that's something that a lot of people don't know. And this is an old proverb that I don't like to hear. Oh, in wars, the rich get richer. No, everyone usually gets poorer. Like, the national government gets poorer. The arms manufacturers may make money, but everyone else in the economy is losing money as a war goes on. Wars are damaging. Even to the country that wins, they can be damaging. Just look at World War I. Most of the countries involved in that war, France, Britain, and the Russian Empire, either ended up completely non-existing in the example of the Russian Empire, or they were broke at the end of the war, like France and the UK. With that in mind, that's why it's generally not something that's possible for a war to continue once a country goes broke. Once they go broke, they default. And usually that's when economic collapse follows. The entire national economic system goes bottom up. And then that's also when wars pretty much end, because they can't really fight them anymore, because they don't have the money to pay the troops. They don't have enough money to pay the ammunition manufacturers. The private sector is literally collapsing, so there's no tax base anymore to keep buying weapons with. So it's pretty much over at that point. The war ends if they go broke. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, and I thank you once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one here goes to Los Federales, who puts in a 10 and says, I just wanted to know, how are you guys so informed about all the military info, etc.? And I really appreciate the streams every single night. And my newborn still keeps me up, but you guys help me go to sleep. From Los Federales.
Hey, and thank you so much for the support, Los Federales. And to answer that question, I just read a lot. Like, Matthew knows a decent bit about military equipment now. Back at the beginning of the war, I don't think he knew much of that stuff, because it wasn't really his wheelhouse or anything that interested him for most of his life. It's been something that really interested me a lot, so I would always sit there and I would read, oh, what's this, what's that? So I would read about things like the T-55, the T-72s, the T-80s, the T-90s, the T-14s, the Abrams. I would read about any and every vehicle that existed out there. I would read about doctrine, strategy, tactics, weaponry on every level, how these nations would fight on the battlefield, the history behind the wars, and a whole bunch of other stuff as well that leads you to have a much better understanding of why nations fight the way they fight, and also how they fight a war, like how they actually fight it on the logistics side. All that stuff I just read a lot about. And so that's generally how I know. There's really no other way. Like, I don't have military experience. I've never been in the military, and I am only 22. I had to think about that for a second. I'm going to turn 23 next year, but I'm only 22, so I have like no actual military experience, and all of this has just been from reading. Also, there's always great documentaries out there that also help out greatly with it, and YouTube videos too. YouTube is a very educational place when you look in the right spots. You can learn so much about any topic if you're on YouTube. Like, truly, like, the two things I would say are the absolute cornerstone of learning or knowledge in the modern day internet, it truly is the internet, because the internet is a cesspit, but at the same time, it's also an amazing and incredible thing. It's kind of a double-edged sword. You get the greatest of the great, and you get the worst of the worst on the internet. It really just amplifies those two things. But on the internet, you can learn so much, and the most important learning tools that I've ever seen on the internet, outside of just like reading books and stuff that I found on the internet, sometimes bought in real life, others, was Wikipedia, which is mostly true. Like most everything on Wikipedia is factually correct, especially after I started reading things and then I went back to Wikipedia. I was like, oh, dang, look, they got most of it correct. And then let's see here. Another thing that's incredibly good is YouTube itself. YouTube is an amazing kind of a platform to learn a lot on, especially if you're not one for reading and you're one for more so hearing a story. And a lot of YouTubers have an incredible deal of magic about creating good stories out of different kinds of historical topics or even entire eras. One of the more interesting channels, I like to give shout outs to channels that aren't in our category. So I'm going to give a shout out really quickly to one of them that I've been watching recently. One of them is called Part-Time Explorer, and he is a channel just a little bit bigger than ours. I think he has like 360,000 subs. He deserves like 500,000 or 600,000 at this point. I don't know why he doesn't have that many. He needs more. But he's got an amazing channel, and he does all kinds of interesting historical videos on largely obscure topics. Like they're topics that really aren't known, like the wreck of the SS Hungarian, the wreck of the SS Arctic. He also travels around to ghost towns in America and documents their locations, how they looked at the time, shows the buildings, and also explains a lot about those towns' history. It's a very, very interesting kind of information to learn, because it's not like the mainstream stuff, and that's why I really appreciate this guy about, is that he doesn't do the mainstream historical topics, you know, like World War II. He does like the more niche topics, but they're still incredibly interesting. He has a great way of telling the story and also presenting the places to where it is a hell of a thing to just watch, even if you're not really into history. It's just a great story to hear. But beyond that, all those things are the way I learned a lot of this stuff, and that's how I'm able to just shoot it off on air. And then we're always learning while we're on air, because there will be folks who throw in super chats and they're like, I was in this position in the military, and this is actually in a simple way how this works. And it's like, oh, I didn't know that. And then we add that into the repertoire. And so I just keep on learning. Matthew keeps on learning as well. And so with that, I hope that does address that well. Thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one here goes to Uncle Sam's misguided child, who puts in a $10 donation. Thank you very much, Uncle Sam, for that support. He said the ICC, in his opinion, is corrupted, and that we've learned that they're a puppet of the undercover fascist, and free the world. Just love Ukraine. USA, LSA forever, and Allen 2028. And Uncle Sam, I know why you're saying that all of a sudden, because they apparently issued an arrest warrant for Benjamin Netanyahu inside of Israel. And I would have to say that I completely find that to be atrocious that they're issuing arrest warrants for the leader of Israel when there's literal war criminals walking around, for example, Putin and also Xi Jinping inside of China, that the ICC is not that really concerned with right now, but they're more concerned with Netanyahu inside of Israel, who's trying to defend his country. Kind of a little bit odd, if you ask me. But, Enforcer, what say you?
Oh, the ICC is just stupid. I can't stand the ICC. Like when people are like, "Oh, the ICC is going to get Putin." It's like, no, they're not. They're this useless organization, and all they do is just symbolism stuff. It's like the Doomsday Clock, really, in my opinion, because the Doomsday Clock used to be this really like, it used to be really good, and now they made it a really political thing. You know, like, let's see here. Let me think of what the Doomsday Clock used to be. I think it was made right after the Cuban Missile Crisis, and it was kind of counting down the how many seconds there were till a nuclear apocalypse. Pretty much, that's what it was for. And nowadays, it's like over goofy things. Like they get really political here in America. Like, oh, you know, like that. Let's see here. Let me think of something, because this is something that just annoys the hell out of me about the Doomsday Clock now. They're like, oh, not enough wind turbines were made this year? Well, guess what? We're wrapping it up another 3 seconds. It's like, that's not what the Doomsday Clock was for. Like, it's like, this is trying to make it relevant by politicizing. It's like, that's just not what this thing is made for. It's made for an entirely different thing, and that annoys the hell out of me. And I feel like the ICC is kind of like that now, too. It's just like, hey, let's do something to feel good. Let's put out arrest warrants. It's like, That's stupid. And on top of that, they don't even have any enforceable power anywhere. They count on countries literally arresting these people for them and then bringing them to them. And there's no one that's going to arrest Netanyahu. There's no one that's going to arrest Putin. So it's a completely useless organization, in my opinion. I just cannot stand the ICC for those reasons. But still, I hope that does address that fairly well. And I thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next super chat here goes to none other than Avari Mandubratis, who puts in a $20 donation. And Avari, thank you very much for that support. And also, you told me earlier in the live chat that he was one of those gamers. Oh man, one of them gamers on Discord. But anyway, Avari said, how about looking at the Houston ship channel and the ports of Houston and Galveston?
And I thank you so much for the support. And let's see, the Houston ship channel. I thought you were talking about a YouTube channel. It's apparently a ship channel, like an actual navigational channel. So let's go down there to the Houston ship channel, which you can actually kind of see right there. You see vessels transiting up and down the Houston ship channel. But nevertheless, it goes straight into here, Houston ship channel. But I don't know why I keep saying it like that. It's a little stupid of me. But beyond that, let's see here. And it is quite a large intermodal port right here. No joke. That's a pretty sizable one, actually. But let's see here. Houston and Galveston. So let's go to Galveston, which, where the hell is Galveston? Oh, here we go.
Oh, that's in Texas.
Yeah, this is in Texas. You sounded like that's news to you. Like, you're like, hey.
No, I said it just be a smart ass, but go ahead.
Well, I thank you for that. I didn't catch on to it like that. I guess that shows how stupid I really am. But nevertheless, the Texas A&M University at Galveston is in the middle of a shipyard. I just realized that, Matthew.
Huh, that's interesting. Oh, wait a minute. Whoa. Wait.
Pelican Island. It's Pelican Island.
Interesting. A university there. It's fascinating.
Isn't there like a prison on Pelican Island?
Maybe it's the college.
Maybe it is the college. Who knows? But also, the USS Texas is right down here. Look at that. And they literally just moved it, I think, from its berth somewhere around here. Where was it? Huh. I can't find where the berthing was, but whatever. Anyways, it was somewhere around here at San Jacinto Historic Point, and then they just moved it right down here in a dry dock, and they're refitting it. Pretty cool that they literally just moved it right down the way to start repairing it. But beyond that, what a cool place. I don't really know a lot about the Houston and Galveston ports or harbors, but it still is interesting to see. Now, one thing I do know a little bit about, just a little bit, like a tiny bit, is that we have 20 superheats to go. And so with that, thank you so much.
Autocorrect is a nightmare.
Man, the superheats. But still, with that, I hope that does address that well. Thank you so much once again for support of Ari Mandabras and helping this channel to keep on running. And before we move on to the next one, I do have to let y'all know I'm going to have to be speeding it up just a little bit because we have 20 super chats left and we're going to start running considerably overtime. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
All right, so our next one here is going to go to John Bernard, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much, John, for the support. He said, what are the chances with a new administration that we will see a ceasefire by the anniversary of the war on February 22nd, 2025? And escalation at this point seems unnecessary and dangerous. He said, hashtag not a Russian bot.
And thank you for the support. I would have to say that the chances of a ceasefire happening by then, quite unlikely, in my opinion. I think that the Russian Federation is going to be playing hardball with negotiating and pretty much refuse to for a while, even with them being in the state they're in, and the war will go on for a good bit longer. That would be my opinion. But I do thank you so much for the support. I hope that does address that well, and we are on to the next one.
And our next one here goes to Cachulian343, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much, Cachulian. They said Russia could achieve all their war goals today, and they're still 100% doomed, and Ukraine just has to outlast them 1 to 2 more years, and I genuinely think that with a full economic collapse, that Ukraine can get everything back.
Possibly so. That's what we're kind of thinking at this point as well, as long as they hold out, they've pretty much won at this point. And so with that, thank you once again for support. I hope that does address that the best I can. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Uncle Sam's misguided child yet again, who puts in a 10. And he said, the Ukrainian intelligence caught Dr. Unaliver, and she is evil, and apparently did terrible things to POWs, and also love Ukraine, and long live freedom.
And thank you so much for support, and that's great to hear that they caught her, and hopefully they'll be able to bring her to justice. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that well, and we are on to the next one.
And this one's going to go to Herp Derp NV, who puts in a 10 and says, can we get a hood review again on Kensington in Philly? And if you look at the real estate sites, there are some hoods listed in, like, for example, 2917 Kip Street that look like scenes from the first 48.
Let's see. I'm trying to think. Let's see. Here's Kensington right here. We'll drop down here. Kensington's Kensington. Looks like hell all over, so it doesn't really matter what street we're on. Oh my god. Oh my god. Get me out of here. It's scary. It really is.
Yeah, it's Kensington.
Oh heavens. Oh great heavens. It's Kensington. What do we have here? A garden of porcelain. Heavens. But nevertheless, it's a rough place here in Kensington. Oh, it looks a little bit better with it being grown out in the summer, but it's still rough. I don't think anyone could disagree with that here. But nevertheless, I do thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because it is folks like you who help to make this thing possible. And oh look, you can get some tattoos here at the tattoo parlor. But nevertheless, thank you so much once again. And we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Sam Crenshaw, who puts in a 10. And thank you, Sam, for the support. He said, keep on doing what you two do so best, beating the mainstream media at their own jobs. And Enforcer, you know so much about the military and geopolitics. It's impressive every time.
Hey, and thank you so much for the kind words. And hopefully we keep beating the mainstream news. And thank you for appreciating my knowledge on things, because it is really ad-libbing on the fly. But still, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address it incredibly well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And this one goes to Danny B. Danny B put in 2 super chats here. They're each $10 donations. And a huge shout out to you, Danny B, for always supporting the channel. Also, he said, good evening, Enforcers. I was not able to catch a lot of the stream. My headphones died, and I was super busy at the restaurant. But I will definitely go back and listen. And I'm catching the end right now. And I just got home listening to y'all and watching Black Hawk Down, one of my favorite movies. But how real it is, and also what happened for real.
And thank you for the support, Danny B, and it's perfectly fine. Sometimes headphones die. Mine almost died on the Sunday night stream, actually. It was like just 10 minutes away from dying when we ended the stream, but I still thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And also, nice to hear you watching Black Hawk Down. That was actually based in Mogadishu in Somalia. Still pretty interesting place even today. The Villa Somalia? What's this right here? Kind of looks like a prison, honestly. But nevertheless,
it must be a diplomatic compound of some sort.
Maybe? Yeah, it kind of does look like it. Yeah. But still, looks like a prison to me. It's like, dang, that thing's kind of rough, not gonna lie. Also, what the hell's going on in this part of town? It's just covered in smoke. It's a smoke show down there. Jesus. but beyond that, I do thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And yes, it's a very interesting movie for sure. Very realistic as well. And also, I believe I read one of the books on one of the guys who was there, and he ended up getting wounded. I think it was in the SEALs, if I'm correct. But still, thank you so much once again. I hope that is addressed it the best I can. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, huge shout out to Robert Johnson for putting in a 5 and supporting the channel. And thank you very much, Robert, for that support. We also have a 6 from Jason Curling, who said anything new about what's going on in country of Georgia, and thanks to Elsa.
We've heard that let's see, it's the Georgian Dream Party won. From what we understand, the opposition government has taken over in West Abkhazia. They overthrew the president there. And in Georgia, we don't really know what's happening yet, but it does seem as though Georgian Dream is taking control of the country at the moment. And that's really all I know at this exact moment, and we're still trying to get some more information on that as time goes by, but we don't really get much, to be entirely honest, on Georgia at the moment. But still, thank you for the support. I hope that does address that well, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here goes to not for one, yet for all, Ukraine, who puts in a 5. And thank you very much for the support as well. They said, I was lurking a month or 2 before y'all had another guest on. And how long have I been in the LSA?
Let's see here. Another guest on. I don't know which one that is, but that means you would have been around for about, if I'm thinking of the right one, 2 years and like 8 months at this point, I think. So you've been around for one hell of a time. And so thank you for the support and being an old guard and a channel legend and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Kachulian at 343, who puts in a 5 and says the Russian economy is about to completely break down. If it crashes hard enough, Ukraine won't have to agree to peace because Russia won't exist to fight.
And that's true. That may be the case. And I suppose that we just kind of have to wait it out and see what the economic situation looks like in Russia here in the near future. But still, I thank you so much once again for support and hoping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Casualty 343, who actually was one we just read off. I forgot to mark it in red, but thank you once again, Casualty. And the next one goes to Mitchell Hadmaker, who was in his first ever super chat on the channel. A $5 donation, and thank you very much. He said, how will Ukraine sustain their manpower when Russia has a much larger population, and what tactics does does Ukraine use to fight Russia?
It's simple. They just lower the conscription age and fight defensively. That's all they have to do, and they are largely able to conserve their manpower. And so with that, I thank you for the support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Canadian Juice Box, who puts in a 5 and says, is there any credible sources for China warning Russia to stop with the nuclear threats? And I may now have seen the answer earlier.
I haven't seen any, to be entirely honest. Like, that's just kind of like, you know, the wind, just, you know, like a message in the wind passing by. It's nothing really. I've never seen any proof for it. That's why we haven't reported it, because, you know, even if they did, like, it's probably one of those damn the Times stories, and they're like, China sent a letter to Russia congratulating them on existing, and it only said, we congratulate you. It didn't say, we humbly and greatly congratulate you, showing that the Chinese are really giving them a warning. I would bet you money that's where that came from, because I have not seen any hardcore proof on a public diplomatic statement by the Chinese that they've said that to the Russians. But with that, I do hope that that does address that well, and I thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one here goes to BOFH, who puts in a 5 and says, pulse Doppler radar uses speed to find things, and if the plane was moving slow enough, it probably got filtered out by appearing as background noise.
Maybe so, but I feel like still a aircraft moving at 60 to 70 miles an hour, considering that crop dusters move at that speed, would show up on some radar somewhere, at least to me. Maybe I'm wrong, but that may also be a good explanation as to why it flew so far without being detected as well. But still, thank you so much once again. I hope that has addressed that the best I can, and we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Resonance, who puts in a 5 and says, do you think that Russia will go nuclear as they become more desperate?
I think the chance gets higher as they do get more desperate. I would say yes, but I don't think the chance ever gets to the extreme where it's almost going to be a certainty that they would. It's just that it gets a little bit closer, but not by much. But with that, I do hope that it addresses that well. Thank you once again for support. And with that, we are on to the next one. Hello, Matthew, you there? He is not there. 1 second, y'all. Let me try and see if I can fix that really quickly. 1 second. 1 second. Hello?
Good evening. Good evening.
Screen share doesn't matter. With that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and that damn lag, I'm telling you what, it drives me crazy. But the next one here goes to Rickard Brahma, who puts in a 5 and says, NATO intel, is Putin might attack Lithuania? Have you heard?
Oh no, I have not heard that one. I don't know why they would want to attack Lithuania, just individually out of everyone, because if they were going to do that, they might as well attack Lithuania and Poland simultaneously and just close the gap, but, I have not heard that one outright. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. Thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, and we are on to the next one.
And all of a sudden the lag has disappeared, which is a miracle. But this one goes to a something here, who puts in a 5 and says, do you think that Mike Norvell isn't, let's see. I don't know about this one. I think this is about a football game or something like that. I really don't know. But Enforcer, have you seen this question?
Oh, let me see here. So this is a football coach. I haven't seen the question, though. Let me go try and look at the question really quickly. Oh, let's see here. See, hang on. I have no clue. I'm sorry, I don't know sports much. I do thank you for your first super chat ever to the channel and helping it to keep on running. Unfortunately, while many people think I know everything about all the kinds of stuff, I don't really know a lot about sports. In fact, I really don't know anything at all about sports. But still, I thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and this one goes to Uncle Sam's misguided child yet again, who puts in a 5 and says, any thoughts on that very unsavory person unaliving the rabbi and the UAE?
is a detestable act of terrorism. That's really all I can say about it at the moment, because I don't know a lot of details, but just hearing it from the onset, killing anyone for ideological purposes is a pretty low sort of a let's see, what would we call it? It's a low. It's just a very low down thing. I can't think of the other word at the moment. I think my brain's starting to go dead. But I thank you for the support and help with this channel to keep on running. And we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to John Person, who puts in a 5. He said, let's see. Welcome Australian viewers. But he put it in an upside down. I don't know how he even did that. I didn't even know that was possible. It's literally upside down. Do you see that?
Yeah, I saw it, man. Like, and he's being Australian friendly because, you know, they're in the land down under, so everything's upside down for him.
Oh, that's wild. I would like to know how you do that, actually.
That is pretty cool. I'm not gonna lie. I saw that and I was like, bro, that is so cool. But still, thank you for the support and help with the channel to keep on running. And hello to all the Australians once again. And with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to a Canadian juice box once again, who puts in a 5 and says, is there any credible sources about China warning Russia to stop the nuclear threats?
Not that I've seen. Let me see. Let me type this in. China warns Russia no nuke threats. Let me just type this in and see what results we get. Let's see here. Newsweek. Wait, hang on. Let's see. Hong Kong Free Press is the only source that I've seen say this. And then the only time that we've seen anyone report on this, from what I can see on YouTube, I want to make sure here, hang on. I want to make sure. It's all like tabloid channels, so no, there's no credibility to this one at all, from what I can tell. But I do thank you for the support and help with this channel to keep on running. But I would say that no one would have a clue that happened unless they're making the story up. And so we're on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Famaz, who puts in a 5 and says, thoughts on the ICC Netanyahu arrest warrant?
It's one of those stupid symbolic things. It's like, you know, let's feel good. Let's give out arrest warrants. That's really what it is. It's really goofy. It will not be enforced by anyone. Like, for example, if the United Kingdom's like, Netanyahu, do you want to make a visit to the United Kingdom? They're in the ICC, and then you just go, we're not arresting him, and then just ignore the arrest warrant. That's how it goes. So it means nothing. It's just some stupid thing, and I think that was really poorly thought out by the ICC. Makes him look like a goofy organization. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our last super chat of the night is going to go to Jason Curling, who puts in a $4 donation and does not leave a comment. But thank you very much, Jason, for that support and helping to keep us running. And you're going to take us right into the live chat segment, because it is now time to jump right into it. And of course, up first, we had the Morse Code Decoders of the stream. Tonight, it was Cliff Simonson, Mark Hodges, Earl Bernew, Kevin J, Paul Schultz, David Millsaps, Her Royal Fluffiness, and Arabelle Garbo. They said that the Morse code for tonight says, from the LSA Signal Corps, NATO is ready for war because the Republic will not stand for what the Axis is doing. LLT, LSA, and great job, guys.
And that's the sound of money, and y'all got that down on the nail. That was the Morse code message of the night. I got to congratulate y'all for getting that correct again. Another time indeed, because y'all continue to get that correct time and time again, even on the 1007th day of the war. And so I got to congratulate y'all for that greatly. I cannot fast talk tonight. I can't do it. But nevertheless,
whoa,
what? Huh?
Oh, Jack, whoa.
Whoa, Jack, whoa. But with that, we are moving on to our live chat segment, which, due to time constraints, sadly, unfortunately, we will only be able to take 3, and then we'll be rounding out tonight's stream. And so with that, third to last question of the night.
And Lord, Jack, this one goes to Singularity, who says, even though NATO is defensive, can a country like Poland perform preemptive strikes without NATO's permission?
Technically they can, but that would be met with the ire of the entirety of the NATO alliance. And then if they're attacked in turn, then it'll probably be a big question on whether that's a defensive action or not, or whether Article 5 should be invoked, because they would have been the aggressor technically because they fired first. So with that, I hope that addresses that fairly well, and we are on to the second to last question of the night.
And this one goes to Strobex. He says, I thought the Ukrainians were dealing with a personnel shortage, and where are they finding some for a counteroffensive?
Oh, well, they lower the conscription age. And also, generally, the Ukrainians, when they say they're running into a manpower shortage, it really means in the long term, not the short term. That's at least what we understand it to be. So it doesn't really directly affect them right now. It will affect them later on down the line, maybe in a year or so. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And we are on to the final question of the night. And so, who was the lucky last person who threw in the lucky last question of the night?
And that viewer is going to be AF Kaplan, who says this NATO declaration is all well and good, but how long before ordnance and equipment actually get to Ukraine?
Well, probably never, because the NATO plenary assembly doesn't really have any power to send munitions. They don't even have any munitions, and that's something that's misunderstood by many that talk about NATO, is that NATO is not an army. NATO is a group of countries under a common alliance, and so it would take the countries of France, Britain, Germany, Poland, America, Canada, Ireland, Norway, Sweden, Finland, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, the Czech Republic, Italy, Spain, Portugal, Greece, Turkey, Romania, Hungary, and all the other countries that are a part of NATO to individually say, for their country, we're going to send these weapons, and then they send them to Ukraine. So generally, the NATO statements don't really mean much, as in, like, the weapons are on the way. It's just NATO saying the countries that are in NATO should send weapons their way. That's really what it is more so. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And also a big shout out to Bruce Lee, who threw in the 2 for the Barb Food Fund. And I got
Bruce Lee, let's go, Bruce Lee.
Let's go, Bruce Lee. We got to feed them Barb. But nevertheless, thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we have reached the end of tonight's stream. I'm going to thank you all so much once again for watching. I hope you all have greatly enjoyed the stream tonight. And if you all have, please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. We'd love to see new people who are here. We just got up to 316,000 subscribers today. Absolutely incredible. We're halfway up to 317,000. And I got to thank everyone who watched the video that was put out today as well. Absolutely stunning stuff. And we'd love to see it. And so with that, thank you all so much once again for watching. And we'll see you all tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern Time to cover the next 24 hours of the news from around the world. And so with that, good night, good luck, take care, stay safe, Slava Ukraini, and long live the Leaf Spring Army, and long live the Republic.
And with that, folks, once again, huge shout out for another great stream tonight. And please be sure to join us all tomorrow night at 10 p.m. Eastern for the next Night of War News streaming. And also midday tomorrow as well, because tomorrow is my War News video day. And if there's enough news to cover, I will be making that video tomorrow. So with that, thank you all for another great stream. Slava Ukraine, Herom Slava, get some rest, and good night.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.